Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Konoha. I turn on the limiter in the ninja world. Chapter 41. The family had a happy dinner. Hyuga Hiyashi was quite happy to know that they would not go out to eat today. Although he still looked serious on the surface, Ryosuke could feel from his emotional fluctuations and body language that he cared about the feeling of family reunion. However, the warm scene of the family drinking tea and chatting together after dinner would not appear in the Hyuga family. As before, after dinner, Hyuga Hiyashi got up and returned to the study to busy himself with work. Ryosuke and Hinata also started their evening practice and homework. But now there is a little change, that is, Hanabi has grown up, can walk, jump and hop, and is at the age where she can't stay still. In the past, there were only Ryosuke and Hinata in the quiet practice field, but now there is an additional Hanabi watching the game. Come on, sister. Under the distant lights, the little Hanabi sat on a bench, eating snacks and shouting like watching a play. The training ground was no longer as dark as before. In order for Hanabi to see their movements clearly and not to be afraid, the lights around the training ground were turned on. I also want little Hanabi to cheer me up. Ryosuke pretended to be distressed and looked at Hinata in front of him. Hee. Hinata hummed proudly at her sister's cheering. In front of outsiders, she would appear to be more indifferent, but in front of Ryosuke and Hanabi, she took off her disguise and protection. And because of several active actual combats, she ranked first in the girls' group of the same grade. After regaining her self-confidence, she became much more cheerful. Looking at Hinata's eager posture with satisfaction, Ryosuke stretched his body, smiled and waved at her, then start now, attack me with all your strength. For a month, he didn't meet his future wife, so what would he look forward to most after meeting? Ryosuke didn't know what others thought, but he had only one idea, that is, to test whether Hinata's strength had really improved. He was not surprised that she could overwhelm the girls of the same grade. As the future head of the Hyuga family, this was what she should do. In fact, she should set her goal on the entire grade, not just the girls. Can I really attack casually? Ryosuke-kun. Hinata quickly replied, also stretching her body to prepare for the next battle. When, looking at her posture strangely, Ryosuke had just begun to answer when the girl in front of him rushed towards him. This familiar scene made him smile even more. Easily avoiding Hinata's sneak attack, Ryosuke casually pushed out a palm behind him to block the real attack. This scene seemed familiar. Wasn't it the little trick he played when his father tested him more than a year ago? But unfortunately, your intention is too obvious, and this inferior method will have a big loophole in the face of a real fight. Easily blocking Hinata's attack, Ryosuke's chakra condensed under his feet, away from her attack range, and gently instructed, you just need to understand that real fighting is unscrupulous. I thought, you wouldn't avoid my first palm. Although the attack was easily avoided, Hinata did not stop and launched a fierce attack on Ryosuke. But unfortunately, Ryosuke didn't even plan to block the palm strikes that followed. He put his hands behind his back and shook his body wantonly. No matter how hard Hinata tried to stare at Ryosuke, there was no way for her to have a chance to hit his acupoints. So, those are all inferior means, just like when I faced my father's test, I took advantage of his willingness to show mercy and underestimate me. While dodging her attack leisurely, Ryosuke continued. In a real battle, the enemy will not show mercy, and in most cases will not underestimate you. Although I guessed you're fighting thinking, I don't know what stage your level has improved to in this month, and I don't know what new techniques and moves you have mastered. But now it seems that you have mastered the shadow clone technique. As he said this, his body jumped high with a very strange amplitude, once again pulling away from Hinata. And where he was originally standing, another Hinata swung his palm in the air. Two Hinatas appeared on the field. One of them was a shadow clone with a physical body, which was different from the illusion caused by the ordinary clone technique. If he was careless in the first palm just now and confidently thought that it was just a clone, he should have been hit by Hinata's palm and some of the acupoints were sealed. After all, Ryosuke didn't use his Byakugan during the fight, he just relied on his eyes and senses to dodge. You are really amazing, Ryosuke. Under the high-intensity attack, no palm was effective, which made Hinata a little breathless, but she kept a firm look on her face. No matter how hard I try, I can only see your back. In this month, I thought I could finally stand next to you, but now it seems that I was too optimistic. In the past, she often practiced with Ryosuke. Although she lost every time, she had no idea about Ryosuke's strength at that time. Now, she is already the first in the girls' group of the same grade in actual combat, but she can't leave any trace on Ryosuke, which makes her clearly feel the gap between her and Ryosuke. Or it can be said that it is the gap between Ryosuke and their peers. Maybe even the always self-important Uchiha Sasuke will be like her, and he will never be able to touch Ryosuke. After all, Hinata has observed Uchiha Sasuke's battles. Although she is not sure that she can beat the opponent, she can still fight back and forth. Remember what I told you. Don't set your goals too high. Ryosuke replied gently, you are already very good. Compared with the original you have improved a lot, which is beyond my expectations. But, I still can't touch you, right? Hinata bit her lower lip tightly, feeling very unwilling. Shaking his head helplessly, Ryosuke continued to comfort him, when I picked you up from school this afternoon, I heard you say that you were going to fight with Inuzuka Kiba tomorrow. Although the Inuzuka clan is not weak in physical skills, more secret skills need to be carried out in conjunction with ninja dogs. Kiba's Akamaru has not grown up yet. With your current speed and strength, as long as you keep a stable mentality, there is no problem in defeating him. You can start to challenge the boys' group. Your progress is really beyond my imagination. But I still can't keep up with you. Hinata was not distracted by the comforting voice. She still looked at Ryosuke very persistently, at least. I have to touch you at least. White eyes, open. Along with this stubbornness, the chakra in her body surged and gathered beside her eye sockets. For this battle, Ryosuke, who has always been very casual, looked at her with some surprise. It turns out, in this month, she has opened her eyes. There are many people in the Hyuga clan, but not everyone has the ability to open the Byakugan. To awaken the blood in one's body and open the Byakugan is related to the intensity of each person's practice and the purity of the Byakugan. The use of the soft fist does not necessarily require the Byakugan. The Byakugan plays an auxiliary role in the use of the soft fist. In fact, the strength of the soft fist mainly depends on the familiarity of the acupoints and meridians, the control of chakra and the force-generating skills. The human body is very complex, and there are countless meridians and acupoints. Without the Byakugan, relying only on the naked eye and the familiarity of the human body, although it is also possible to intercept chakra and acupoints, this is difficult to do without certain talent and effort. Even if it can be done, most Hyuga people can only use incomplete soft fists and cannot exert their full strength. The existence of the Byakugan is the shortcut for the Hyuga clan to master the soft fist. Originally, Hinata was already very familiar with the meridians and acupuncture points of the human body under Ryosuke's one-on-one guidance, and could use incomplete soft fists without relying on the Byakugan. And now, she has awakened her blood. Ryosuke was very pleased to learn that Hinata had opened her Byakugan during the time he was away, but he still had no intention of letting her go. With his hands behind his back, he nimbly dodged Hinata's attacks, and from time to time, he gave some advice. After opening the Byakugan, your insight has improved, and your speed and strength have also increased, but your desire to fight is not strong enough, and you have not yet formed your own fighting consciousness. Unfortunately, although your eyes can see my movements and transmit them to your brain, it is still too slow for the brain to respond in a short time and give feedback to your hands and feet for attack. In this way, you will always be one step behind me. Byakugan and soft fist are just means of attack, tools, and you are the one who uses the tools. Thinking about how to use these powers is the most important thing. After Hinata opened her Byakugan, it means that she can see Ryosuke's body acupuncture points and meridians more thoroughly. If he is touched, it is very likely that his chakra will be cut off, followed by a bombardment of the semi-finished Bagua 32 palms. Although the 32 palms is only a semi-finished product of the Bagua 64 palms, as long as it is used properly, it can also make him lose the increase in chakra to his body in a short time. But unfortunately, Hinata couldn't hit the target no matter what she did, just like when she didn't open her Byakugan just now, and even Ryosuke couldn't touch the corner of her clothes. Come on, sister. In the distance, under the lights, Hanabi was still cheering for Hinata happily. She was young and couldn't understand the advantages and disadvantages of this battle, let alone what her sister Hinata was facing now. Your chakra is almost exhausted. Ryosuke reminded softly. With your chakra, it is already very difficult to use high-level ninjutsu such as shadow clones. After opening the Byakugan, your chakra consumption is even greater. Let's stop here for today's training. He didn't open his Byakugan, but from Hinata's increasingly slow movements and heavy breathing, it can be seen that her current condition is already extremely reluctant. However, Hinata ignored his words and gritted her teeth and insisted on waving her palm. But unfortunately, this effort was in vain. As chakra quickly drained away, her speed, strength and other values began to decline, and her Byakugan was already very unstable, and she might quit at any time. Slow steps, slow swings. Since chakra was not enough to maintain the Byakugan and increase her physical fitness, she relied on pure physical fitness to persist. As a member of a physical training family, Hinata's physical fitness was very good. She persisted for a long time. How long was it? It was difficult for Ryosuke to be distracted in the battle to judge the approximate flow rate of time. The Hyuga clan's territory was very large, and they could not feel the prosperity of Konoha village at night in the center of the Hyuga clan. This training ground was extremely quiet from the beginning. Under the night sky, they could not feel the passage of time even more. Time passed little by little. Hinata did not give up, and Ryosuke did not continue to persuade her to accompany her to carry out this test. Until the end, her movements were almost as slow as a tortoise, and the tired look on her face almost lost consciousness. She gritted her teeth and did not speak, and Ryosuke also did not let her touch a bit. Even Hinata now has no ability to use soft fists. Her palm strikes have become weak fists, but he always takes it seriously. But even if he takes it seriously, the gap between the two is too big. Ryosuke has always regarded this battle as a test for Hinata. Miss Hinata, Master Ryosuke, I will take Miss Hanabi back first. In the end, it was the butler Alyong who came to the training ground to break the stalemate. Because of her young age, Hanabi had already fallen asleep on the chair at some point. That is to say, the people in this world are generally physically superior, otherwise, she would probably catch a cold tomorrow. After all, it is already autumn now. Let's stop here today. Ryosuke looked at Hinata who had stopped moving, and spoke again in a gentle voice. Her face was full of reluctance, but Hinata's body had reached its limit, and her trembling body had no extra strength to continue the test. Can you still walk? Ryosuke smiled and walked over, trying to support her. Seeing that they were getting closer and closer, Hinata suddenly used the last bit of her strength to pounce forward. Plop! She fell to the ground, raising a cloud of dust. Even at the last moment, Ryosuke did not let down his guard and easily dodged. Lying on the ground unwillingly, Hinata was no longer able to get up. Tell me, should I say you are very competitive, or should I praise you for your strong character? Ryosuke shook his head helplessly, walked over to help her up, and this time, when Hinata reached out to grab his collar, he did not dodge. Take a leave tomorrow. In your current state, you may not be able to resume normal actions tomorrow, or even the day after tomorrow. It will be troublesome to face Inuzuka Kiba. Helping her sit down on a chair to rest, Ryosuke said gently, Inuzuka Kiba, you won't be like me, just dodge and don't fight back. Ryosuke, is my talent really that bad? Hinata pursed her lips and leaned weakly on Ryosuke, looking very lost. The confidence accumulated during this period was destroyed overnight. It's not shameful to lose to me. Ryosuke's expression was a little subtle. He was afraid that Hinata would be like this, setting the goal too high and failing to achieve it, and then hitting herself. What do you think my current level is? While asking Hinata, he pulled up her delicate arm and kneaded it to help her relieve the soreness and pain in her muscles. Ryosuke is very powerful, the most powerful person I have ever seen. Her answer was very subtle, and for some reason, Ryosuke felt that Hinata's body trembled more. Then who do you think is better, me, Kiba Inuzuka, or Sasuke Uchiha? Because it was a bit awkward to massage her while sitting, Ryosuke simply stood up and stood behind her, stimulating her back and unblocking her meridians through the acupuncture technique of the soft fist. You know, stimulating acupuncture points and unblocking meridians are also one of the common methods of medical ninjas, and almost everyone in the Hyuga clan knows this. Of course, Ryosuke is more powerful. It seems that the chakra is used to unblock the meridians and relieve fatigue, which makes Hinata feel uncomfortable. Her voice is intermittent. That's it. If I'm stronger than them, shouldn't you set your sights on them first? After you defeat them, you can challenge me, the strongest one. Ryosuke's tone was very gentle. Hinata's persistence and hard work made him like this girl more and more. Under the night sky, beside the bright lights, while muttering, Ryosuke used chakra to relieve Hinata's fatigue and soreness after the high-intensity battle. The acupuncture points and meridians are very fragile. It is normal to have a certain amount of pain through the stimulation and dredging of chakra. You were not very adaptable before, why are you shaking so badly now? This technique is extremely challenging to control chakra and master the soft fist. In the past, every time Ryosuke helped Hinata practice, he used this method to make himself proficient in the use of chakra. Although this way of practice is alternative, it is much more complicated than the basic tree climbing and water treading. By the way, in this process, he can also help her review the acupuncture points and meridians of the human body. It is also with the assistance of such an excellent teacher that Hinata can learn the skills of soft fist in such a short time. Although the soft fist is not fully mastered, her talent has exceeded the goal. Even if she has no talent in fighting, if she has a good teacher, she can still make up for some shortcomings in practice and take fewer detours. Seeing that the time was almost up, at least tomorrow, Hinata would not be unable to move due to excessive practice. Ryosuke patted her shoulder and walked to her. Let's stop here for today. After a while, I think I can start learning some of the follow-up content of Badwazong. He just opened his mouth to say something, but when his eyes swept across Hinata's face, his voice stopped. Biting her lower lip tightly, her two little hands were placed on her legs, tightly entangled together. Hinata's eyes were unconsciously looking forward, and she didn't notice that he had come to her. On her delicate and cute face, the snow-white skin brought by the blood of the Hyuga clan was already stained with a blush. Is this, dizzy? Ryosuke waved his hand in front of her with some uncertainty. The scene in front of him was really strange. Logically speaking, Hinata now should not have the shy personality in the original book. That personality was not yet deeply rooted, but he had already removed it. But what is the situation now? Hinata, Ryosuke called softly, but it was of no use. Helplessly, he could only raise the volume. And this voice finally woke up Hinata, who was in an unconscious state. Her body trembled violently as if frightened, and then she stared at Ryosuke in front of her with wide eyes, and stood up quickly. What happened to me just now? I was going to ask you what happened to you. Ryosuke looked at her strangely. Whether it was her face or her delicate neck, every part of her skin was faintly flushed. But it was obvious that from her movements and posture when she just got up, she didn't look sick, nor was she injured in the battle just now. Since the change, Hinata, who had always been bold and confident, opened her mouth, but quickly closed it, pursed her lips and didn't speak. What's wrong? Has your body changed? Do you feel uncomfortable? Ryosuke asked with a frown, and directly opened his white eyes and scanned her body. Whether it was chakra or the condition inside her body, it was very stable. The only thing worth noting was that her heartbeat was a little intense. But it was normal that she had just fought a high-intensity battle, and it was normal that she could not recover for a while. But it was obvious that Hinata's performance was very abnormal, so the more normal her body was, the more complicated the situation was. Ryosuke had to wonder if Hinata's blood had also reverted to her ancestral state. After all, although her fighting talent was not very good, she had an absolute advantage in the Byakugan and blood. This was also an important reason why she awakened her Byakugan at this age. Even if ordinary Hyuga had the pressure, desire and effort to become stronger, they could not awaken their pupil skills at such a young age. Ryosuke, actually Finally, in Ryosuke's nervous eyes, Hinata mustered up the courage to speak and looked at him seriously. Actually, I have understood what a couple is, and what obligations I should fulfill as your wife. Her tone was very solemn, with unprecedented seriousness. Opposite her, Ryosuke's nervous expression froze on his face. Is that all? After hearing Hinata's words, this was the first thought in his mind. He thought something big had happened, but it turned out to be just like that. But soon, Ryosuke realized that this idea was just his personal opinion. Marriage is not a very important thing for the ninja world and ninjas. Many powerful ninjas do not have their own partners and live alone until the end of their lives. Although it is not very important, it is also a thing worth devoting energy to in life. Especially for Hinata, who has not experienced cruel battles and is relatively immature in thought. Although she is precocious, this may be a very important thing. I remember that Ryosuke asked me, "Do you know what a husband is? Do you know what kind of relationship you and I have?" At that time, I was still ignorant and didn't understand these things. Ignoring Ryosuke's frozen expression, Hinata continued, "At that time, Ryosuke told me that if I knew what kind of relationship we had, I would tell you clearly. Now, I understand. Although the school taught me a lot of skills to become a ninja, it also taught me a lot of knowledge beyond ninja. The relationship between Ryosuke and I is that of husband and wife. In the future, we will live together, fight together, face death together, support each other, and share life and death." Facing such a serious and solemn Hinata, Ryosuke stood in front of her, and his thoughts were more subtle. After all, the person in front of him, although his wife, was a little girl who was less than 10 years old. In this world, everyone is very precocious, and there is no rule and standard in the previous life that adults are only considered adults after the age of 18. Like Naruto and Sasuke, they are very young, only 16 or 17 years old, and they have become the saviors and heroes who save the world. If this happened in the previous life, what could a 16 or 17-year-old child do? Probably still in school, working hard for a few grades. But here, it is common to go to the battlefield in your teens and experience cruel wars. Even for talented ninjas, there are cases where they go to the battlefield at a few years old. Age does not have a particularly large influence in this world, and talented people can completely ignore this. As for marriage, there are also no special restrictions in this world, such as age. However, generally speaking, considering the physical development, most families will consider marriage at the age of 12 or 13, the age of graduating from the ninja school. This is similar to the situation in Ryosuke's previous life, in ancient times. But although there are no restrictions, Ryosuke's values were developed in another world after all, which are still somewhat different from this world. There was no sound in the silent training ground. Next to the towering street lamp, there were two figures, one tall and one short. The bright yellow light was like fluorescent powder, falling on the two people. Although Ryosuke's thoughts were complicated, in fact, less than a minute had passed. Facing the serious Hinata, he asked gently, "Do you really understand what a real husband-wife relationship is?" "I know. In addition to what the teacher taught me, Ino also told me a lot." Staring eagerly, Hinata nodded with a red face, After we get married, we must trust and rely on each other, and we must give birth to a baby like Hanabi, and we must do." "Okay, I know you understand." Interrupting her words, Ryosuke didn't let her continue. It seems that the precocity in this world is not only reflected in behavior and thinking, but also in love. But it is true that there are many girls in the class who have been fighting for Uchiha Sasuke, including Yamanaka Ino and Haruno Sakura. Hinata occasionally hangs out with them, so it is normal to know these things. Moreover, in the class, if it were not for the public news that Ryosuke and Hinata were engaged, there might be many girls around him. After all, his grades in school are not bad, and although his appearance is different from that of ordinary people, he is also unusually handsome. Such a high-quality boy is very attractive to those girls. However, for these love affairs, they seem childish in this world. Many ninjas generally only have the strong desire for love at this stage in school. Once they graduate and accept the baptism of cruel battles, these comfortable emotions will gradually fade, replaced by the desire for strength. In fact, a long time ago, I knew what the true meaning of husband and wife was, and I also knew what the future life between you and me would be like. Looking at Hinata, who was quietly waiting for a response, Ryosuke said softly, "I hope you can explain to me, because I hope you can also understand what it means if we become husband and wife." His voice was very gentle and subtle. But in this quiet training ground, it could be clearly heard by Hinata. "This relationship between you and me was decided by my father. He hoped that I could marry into the royal family and become your husband, but..." Ryosuke paused, "But I hope that the feelings between you and me are not achieved under the forced interference of my father, but by your own choice." Emotions are mutual. If you exclude your father's arrangement and there is no long established relationship, Hinata, will you still choose to accept me? Are you still willing to stay by my side? This is something I have been hesitating about. I don't want you in the future to regret this relationship. You need a reason to like someone, and rational emotions can last. Otherwise, liking is more of an impulse, a feeling. As for lifelong companionship such as marriage, it is even more worthwhile to spend time considering it. Hinata was obviously stunned by Ryosuke's question. She was a little at a loss. After learning the meaning of the word husband and wife, she had never thought about this question. If there was no arrangement by her father, would she and Ryosuke be like now? I like Ryosuke very much, because Ryosuke is very gentle and treats me very well. Hinata blurted out without hesitation for almost too long, if Ryosuke is around, I feel very safe. During the time you were away, I was very scared and insecure. Although I have been trying to overcome it, although I have begun to adapt to going to school alone and facing my classmates alone, I still miss the time when Ryosuke was around. Because she didn't know how to answer, she could only show all her inner feelings to him completely. She told him what they had done together, every word Ryosuke said to her, and her true feelings in her heart. But more of it was the changes in her heart over the past month. I've always known that Ryosuke is very good, much better than everyone else in school. When I knew the meaning of husband and wife, and the word, accompany each other, I really didn't want to stand behind you, I wanted to stand beside you. I've worked very hard during this period, not only to become a qualified clan leader, but also to satisfy you and make you agree to let me stand beside you. I'm afraid that after explaining the meaning of husband and wife to you, you will abandon this useless me. She tried her best to explain her inner thoughts, waving her palms from time to time to show her thoughts. The blush on her body, the shy state, began to slowly dissipate with the serious emotions, and her skin turned white again, but her expression became more and more serious. As for this scene, Ryosuke did not interrupt her, but listened to her every word with a blank expression. Until the end, when she stopped talking and stared at him eagerly, waiting for a reply, she smiled again. This smile on his face was different from the usual self-disguise. This was an emotional expression from the heart, just like when he was expressionless. He almost forgot that a smile from the heart was such a feeling. So that's it, is this your choice? Ryosuke's smile was very relaxed, but also very complicated. With the same solemn tone, he took a step forward and approached Hinata, bent down slightly, gently pressed his forehead against hers, and stretched out his hand to press on her hair. In front of him was Hinata's flustered eyes. The fine hairs swayed gently on her skin. Feeling her breath, Hinata's body had a very faint smell in addition to the sweat smell after the high-intensity battle. It can't be called a fragrance, but this smell has a fatal attraction to Ryosuke, making him unable to help but sniff deeply. I can't make too many promises, but I will try my best to be a good husband and protect this family. Looking at Hinata calmly and looking directly into her eyes, Ryosuke said seriously, it's not the Hyuga family, but this family of you, me, father and Hanabi, I will protect it carefully. This kind of promise is the first time Ryosuke has spoken, whether in the past life or this life. He is an orphan and understands the feeling of being abandoned. In his previous life, he was very determined about marriage. If he was not sure whether it was really suitable, he would not give any guarantees. So, he has always been alone. But in this world, he felt the warmth of home unprecedentedly. This feeling made him very uncomfortable, but he also enjoyed it. From today, Hyuga Hinata, are you willing to be my wife? He looked directly into Hinata's eyes and asked. When faced with his question, Hinata, who had been panicking because of the close proximity, calmed down inexplicably and said in a firm tone, I do. Ryosuke. Early in the morning, Ryosuke was just about to go to school after a long absence. But just after breakfast and coming to the door, Hinata, who had not been seen since getting up, hurriedly ran over from the courtyard with her short legs, holding a black square box in her hand. Run slower, you were so tired from practicing last night, you should have rested more. Without asking, just smelling the subtle fragrance, Ryosuke knew that it was probably a lunch box prepared for him. It's all what you like to eat. Hinata handed him the lunchbox with both hands, and then stood there eagerly, as if waiting for something. Thank you Hinata for the lunchbox. Ryosuke smiled gently, took the lunchbox she handed over, and gently stroked her hair with his other palm. Rest well at home today, and try to go to school tomorrow so that I can see a good battle. Yeah, Hinata said seriously, half closed her eyes comfortably, shook her head unconsciously, and rubbed Ryosuke's palm, like a kitten. Since the first time she was touched on the head like this a year ago, she has enjoyed the feeling of being caressed. She can feel Ryosuke's tenderness from this action. Especially last night, after she heard such words that made people feel safe, this action made her feel even warmer. Time passed by bit, Ryosuke did not speak again, and Hinata was reluctant to speak. The two stood like this, maintaining this action for a while. Ryosuke, you haven't gone to school yet. But at this moment, a very abrupt voice sounded, waking Hinata who was immersed in a beautiful dream. It was Hanabi, because she ate slowly, she happened to see this scene when she left the yard. She took a step back suddenly, as if she just remembered something, and looked at Ryosuke in front of her in a panic. Ryosuke, you're going to be late. I know, you have a good rest. Ryosuke smiled and retracted his palm that was suspended in the air, and greeted Hanabi behind him, and then left the house. The scene just now was very beautiful. Although he knew that he was going to be late, he didn't want to break the atmosphere. He himself enjoyed it. When he arrived at school, the first theoretical course was almost over. Although he was late in the end, Iruka didn't blame Ryosuke too much. This was the preferential treatment for good students. During the noisy class break, only the last row was relatively quiet. After a month, some people in the class have not changed at all, but some have changed a lot. For example, Naruto. With his back straight and his hands clasped together on the table, he had a relaxed smile on his face. Although his appearance has not changed, Naruto's temperament and posture have changed in this month. Hinata, are you taking a day off today? He asked with a smile. Why, so familiar? Nodding casually, although Ryosuke felt a little strange about his change, he still replied gently, I was too tired from training last night, I may need to rest for a day or two. Really? What a pity. Naruto stretched, I am a little looking forward to her fight with Inuzuka Kiba. The more he spoke, the more strange Ryosuke felt. This feeling was too familiar, whether it was the tone of speech, movements, or even smile, they were too similar to himself. He felt that the changes in Naruto's behavior in the past month made him move closer to him. Forcibly suppressing the strange feeling in his heart, Ryosuke asked softly, did you go to the training ground too? After all, I will become a ninja in the future, and accumulating combat experience is still a very important thing. Naruto nodded, although no one is willing to practice with me, they didn't say anything if I occasionally went to watch the fight. When he said this, the expression on his face was not as lost and bitter as before. Always keep a relaxed and sunny smile, as if he doesn't care about this matter anymore. Without continuing to talk, Ryosuke quietly watched Naruto's expression. Although he had cast an illusion on Naruto before leaving. If Naruto did something out of the ordinary and was captured by the third generation or other high-ranking officials in the village, he would forget some of the processes when he came into contact with Ryosuke, so as to avoid being confessed when his memory was searched. But the details still need to be confirmed. After a while, Ryosuke felt that the illusion he cast on Naruto through the Byakugan was still there, so he said calmly, they are not here. He didn't specify who they were, but both Ryosuke and Naruto now understood. Ryosuke can detect them because of the Byakugan. The moment he heard his words, Naruto's expression relaxed. But although it was a little loose, it was actually not much different from before. It seems that after those words, he understood that some people were secretly monitoring him, and also realized that his position in this village was quite special. As long as I am willing to be a Hokage and willing to protect this village, the third-generation grandfather will teach me a lot of things. Seeing that Ryosuke did not answer his question, Naruto did not continue to ask, and continued to say, recently, he has been teaching me to control my chakra, and I have been working hard for a long time. That fox in my body has a great impact on my chakra. I have never been able to master ninjutsu before, and a big reason is because of this. And recently, after the control of chakra has improved, his influence on me is also slowly decreasing. With a subtle expression, Ryosuke smiled. If the third-generation master knows that you have known some things and are approaching him with the intention of deliberately pleasing him and gaining his trust, you are dangerous. In the past month, Naruto has grown a little fast. Although my identity in the village is more sensitive because of this fox. Naruto put his hand on his abdomen, but the third grandfather is really good to me, and I don't want to lie to him, but I hope to have my own power faster. If he can't trust me, he won't teach me so many things. Why tell me this? Ryosuke asked, his interest rising in his heart. Because you taught me so much, I choose to believe you. Naruto chuckled and answered. The smile on his face was almost exactly the same as Ryosuke's. It's just that the emotional investment is not so deep. This smile is a bit fake and not sincere. I teach you. I don't remember what I taught you. The smile on Ryosuke's face has made his eyes form a crescent. Before people's three views are fully developed, they will change rapidly because of their social circles and experiences. But this change in Naruto makes him feel very interesting. You told me to go to Grandpa Sandai for everything, didn't you? With a few whiskers on his cheeks, Naruto now looks like a cunning little fox. Actually, I can understand monitoring me and isolating me. After all, if this guy really escapes from my body, most of Konoha will be severely damaged and many people will die. Although I don't like this village very much at the moment, but, after all, this is the home where I was born and raised, and there are a few people I care about, so I am willing to protect it. I didn't lie to Grandpa Sandai about this. Naruto's change has brought some fun to Ryosuke's dull life. Apart from training, there are not many things that can interest him now. Even the contact with the future pillars of Konoha in the class did not arouse his interest. Compared with Naruto, who was influenced by him and was exposed to the dark side in advance, other people, including Sasuke, seemed a little too naive. Whether in terms of strength, personality, or behavior, they are a little childish. Of course, this childishness is still relative to this world. However, although he was interested, Ryosuke always kept a distance from Naruto. And Naruto, after realizing the significance of his existence to the village, also began to keep a distance from him and no longer took the initiative to contact him like before. He knew that if he was too close to Ryosuke, it would hurt him. Because he is the head of the Hyuga family and represents the Hyuga clan. However, keeping a distance from each other does not mean that there will be no contact all the time. Sometimes it is a day, sometimes it is a week. Naruto always finds an opportunity to confide in Ryosuke and share his progress with him. Ryosuke could see that he was really lonely. Compared to the carefree Naruto in the original book who would shamelessly get close to the crowd, this Naruto was obviously unwilling to put too much energy on socializing, and he paid more attention to improving himself. And this means that until now, his friend has always been only Ryosuke. Of course, because of Ryosuke, Hinata is also quite nice to him. This time, Hinata should win. In the noisy and sweaty training ground, there was only one place where no one approached. Ryosuke relied on the benefits brought by Naruto and did not have to squeeze with a lot of people. And in a place farther away, with the flat ground as the fighting environment, Hinata and Inuzuka Kiba stood opposite each other. If Inuzuka Kiba is still the same as last time, without any progress, he will lose. Ryosuke crossed his arms, smiled and stared at Hinata on the battlefield, while answering Naruto's questions. Although Hinata is theoretically much stronger than Inuzuka Kiba, after all, she has mastered the soft fist and awakened the Byakugan, and is superior to her peers in terms of physical qualities and chakra. But, real fighting is not just a matter of talking, and Ryosuke's combat experience is not rich, so there is no way to directly judge the outcome from a short battle. A few months have passed since he returned to the village, and Hinata has begun to challenge boys of the same grade. She did not choose those children from ordinary ninja families. Her goal was set on the children of the family from the beginning. However, Ryosuke did not stop this. This goal was correct. With her ability, she would never gain or make any progress in the battle against those ordinary children. But unfortunately, she did not easily win her first battle in the boys' group as Ryosuke thought. She was entangled with the first target, Inuzuka Kiba, for several months. Fortunately, because of Hinata's strong character, she was not discouraged, and she fought and failed again and again. The battle begins. The student who was acting as the referee gave the order. Hinata opened her Byakugan directly and rushed towards Inuzuka Kiba. And Inuzuka Kiba was not afraid of a close combat with Hinata. He rushed forward like a sharp sword, and even ran a few points faster than Hinata. The two figures soon crossed in the center of the field, and the rain-like palm strikes and fierce claw strikes collided with each other. The strong wind from the fists and feet whistled, blowing up the nearby dust. Facing the claw strikes that hit her from time to time, Hinata suppressed the pain and fought back expressionlessly. Although the two people in front of her fought back and forth, this was the result of Hinata's hard work in the past few months. You know, when she first challenged Inuzuka Kiba, she was knocked down in a few rounds, and her soft fist was useless. Looks good, the technique is getting more and more skilled, and the response is getting calmer. Ryosuke chuckled at her movements and nodded with satisfaction. In the past few months, he felt that Hinata's gains might be much greater than several years of hard training. Inuzuka Kiba is not as weak as imagined, although due to his age, he has not mastered any family secrets, and even his ninja dog has not grown up. But as a family, his strength and foundation are not much worse than Hinata. The Inuzuka clan is a family that raises ninja dogs and fights with them. But this does not mean that their single strength is weak. When they fight with ninja dogs, sometimes they can't be regarded as one person and one beast, but should be said to be two beasts. Perhaps because they have been mixed with the ferocious canine beasts for a long time, their clan has the same innate advantages as the beasts in terms of physique. Whether in terms of strength or speed, they are stronger than ordinary people, especially in terms of the five senses, which are almost the same as those of wild beasts, and the most powerful one is the sense of smell. However, these factors are not the reason why Inuzuka Kiba can defeat Hinata in the past few months. The most important point is that their clan has the instinct of wild beasts. Their fighting style is mostly based on this intuition. Driven by instinct, Inuzuka Kiba can avoid most of the soft fist attacks and win by using the method of exchanging injuries for injuries. His beast-like fighting instinct is exactly what Hinata lacks. Her nerve reaction speed is very slow, and she can never react quickly when facing the enemy's counterattack. This lack of ninja and fighting talent makes Hinata unable to exert her own strength in battle, so she can only rely on her own efforts and sweat to make her muscles form instinctive reactions and let her body adapt to the battle. This is a particularly stupid way. It is also the way most ordinary people will use. Without talent, you can only rely on sweat to make up for it. But this process is certainly effective. Hinata's own foundation and ability are not inferior to Inuzuka Kiba. What she lacks is the way to exert her strength. And the challenge of more than a dozen times in the past few months has made her adapt to Inuzuka Kiba's fighting rhythm. After each battle, she can launch more counterattacks little by little in the next battle. She has tried hard to persist until now and can fight back and forth with Inuzuka Kiba, and even 8 trigrams, 2 palms. 8 trigrams, 4 palms. 8 trigrams, 32 palms. High intensity, fast-paced battles are the specialty of the Inuzuka clan, and Hinata has memorized their rhythm with her muscles. When she keeps up with this rhythm, when Inuzuka Kiba has not made great progress and has no new fighting methods, he can only lose. When Inuzuka Kiba was not careful and was successfully entangled by Hinata's soft fist, and he had no time to change his injuries, he had already lost. The soft fist strike landed on him fiercely, and the soft fist chakra burst out from Hinata's hand, entering his body through various acupuncture points and invading his meridians. At first, his chakra was cut off. Then, his body began to become stiff and slow. When the chakra and speed changed, the outcome of this battle was determined. Plop! A dull collision sounded. Even though he had been biting and not admitting defeat, the stiffness of his body made Inuzuka Kiba fall to the ground helplessly. In this battle, Hinata won. At the cost of several months, she grew up. Standing in the training ground panting, Hinata, who won the victory, did not enjoy the fruits of being a winner. Ignoring the cheers and congratulations of the people around her, she turned around, looked directly through the crowd, and found Ryosuke standing at the back with Naruto. Their eyes met. Neither of them spoke, but they smiled at the same time. "I did it, Ryosuke." It seems that through this smile, Ryosuke heard Hinata's inner voice. The days were ordinary. Almost every day was spent in practice. Whether it was Hinata or Naruto, they all became different from the original timeline under the influence of Ryosuke's arrival, and had more powerful abilities and relatively mature minds. While they had made progress, Ryosuke certainly could not stand still. It had been several months since he left Konoha for Kyoto to meet the daimyo. In these months, almost most of the time, Ryosuke took leave to practice alone at home. Only from time to time would he go to school to observe other people's actual combat. After all, he originally planned to go to school just to make friends with the children of other families in the village. But later he found that Hinata could do this well. Although she had always been cold in front of outsiders, due to her identity, her momentum and attitude were extremely intimidating and attractive in the eyes of others. Many people were willing to take the initiative to talk to her and make friends with the Hyuga she represented. As for the contact with other people, Hinata will not be as unkind as Sasuke, who is arrogant and cold. Although she is cold, she will give corresponding courtesy and respect to everyone who is willing to take the initiative to contact and talk enthusiastically. So in terms of strength, although Hinata has some defects for the time being, judging from the momentum and the head of a family, she has already formed a relatively complete prototype. Her change has made the people in the family who were originally dissatisfied with their personalities begin to have some changes. As long as she can grow smoothly, she will undoubtedly become a qualified head of the family. This is a training for Hinata. So, Ryosuke didn't care about these things anymore, but left it to Hinata to do. Sunny morning. Ryosuke, who had just sent Hinata to school, came home and went directly to the training ground. This time, he took a month's vacation. The secondary reason is that the pressure he has been studying hard has finally come to fruition. Ryosuke closed his eyes tightly and stood quietly in an open space in the forest, near which stood a row of lush and majestic ancient trees. Veins bulged around his eye sockets. Although his eyelids were closed, all the images around him were clearly reflected in his eyes and appeared in his mind. Playful birds leapt and glided between branches. Insects in the soil twisted their smooth bodies hard to get out of the ground. The morning dew dripped on the leaves, and the texture of the leaves was clearly visible. These images were like dynamic wallpapers on a computer screen, beautiful and peaceful. The chakra in Ryosuke's body surged wildly and gathered around his eye sockets. The images in his eyes were clearer, and the range he could see was farther, covering 1/6 of the forest area. The huge information chain brought by the wide range of perception made his mind turn quickly to process various senses conveyed by the outside world. Momentum. Recalling the past feelings in his heart, the changes caused by the accidental success a few days ago, and the feelings at that time, were all filtered through his mind. Ryosuke's spirit and energy were raised to the extreme at this moment. His arms, which were unconsciously drooping, suddenly exerted force at this moment, and his hands clenched into fists. His tightly closed eyes opened, and a glimmer of light flashed in his blue-white pupils. Time seemed to stop at this moment. The next second, everything changed dramatically in front of his eyes. Boom! A dull sound came from all directions. Within the range that Ryosuke could see, gravity seemed to change out of thin air, making all objects, including living things, feel pressure and stagnate after the vibration. Nearby, the birds and beasts that were originally playing happily, as if they were awakened, quickly fled from this area with their little hooves. Even if some birds could not fly, they ran with their branch-like feet, as if there were some flood beasts in this forest. The scattered birds and animals in the forest brought a lot of commotion to the training ground. Only the trees were almost unchanged. However, some fragile and subtle life forms, such as insects, lost their voices directly under this vibration. Invisibly, Ryosuke deprived many lives. The chakra in his body was almost drained in an instant, and several parts of his body could not withstand this pressure and transmitted tingling pain. Lying directly on the ground, Ryosuke stretched his limbs to make himself more comfortable, and his mouth and nose made heavy gasps. But this feeling of fatigue did not make Ryosuke feel any discomfort, but made him feel extremely excited. Because he succeeded. While outputting chakra, using the Byakugan as a carrier and the invisible momentum as a transfer interface, he launched indiscriminate substantial pressure in all directions. Moreover, compared with the pressure that sometimes worked and sometimes didn't work in the past, this time he successfully used it through his own consciousness. Although the preparation process took a while and it couldn't be used in the battle for the time being, Ryosuke believed that this problem would be solved soon. As for the power, it was because Ryosuke stretched his perception range as much as possible in order not to cause too much noise. Under the influence of the range, the power would become weaker. If this range is compressed, the power will be correspondingly improved. It's not easy. After a rest, the chakra in the body recovered a little, and Ryosuke straightened up and sat up from the lawn. In a year, knowing that the result is 1, the process of groping from 0 to 1 is really complicated. But after all, this is a secret technique based on the bloodline limit, and the difficulty of development is much more difficult than ordinary ninjutsu. However, like the Rasengan that Minato Namikaze spent several years developing, Ryosuke didn't know whether the pressure used by Kagaya Otsutsuki was the same as his, but he knew very well that his pressure was still just an embryo. He still had many ideas to extend the secret technique he had developed, to make the embryo grow and become a more powerful secret technique. It's time for lunch. The joy brought by this practice was high, but the emptiness in Ryosuke's body forced him to suppress the idea of continuing to familiarize himself with the secret technique. His chakra was almost exhausted. Although he had the physical strength to move after a rest, he still needed to replenish some food and rest. After all, he was still in danger during this period. He asked for such a long leave from school. The secondary reason was to familiarize himself with his secret technique. Then there must be a main reason. And the main reason was that the progress bar in his mind was about to reach its peak value. Although it has been hovering at the 99% stage, it is possible to break through to 100% at any time. He could not predict what would happen at that time. Therefore, he tried his best to keep his body in a relatively stable state without any excessive situation. The progress bar in his mind is the biggest foundation for Ryosuke's future development. The first progress bar was completed, which brought him an evolution in blood, allowing him to have the Byakugan that is closer to the Otsutsuki clan. Now 3 years have passed, and in these 3 long years, Ryosuke has experienced a lot of things. Improve his own abilities and develop the secrets of the bloodline limit. Let his father look at him with new eyes, trust and value him. In the middle of last year, when he was 5 years old, he went to ninja school with Hinata and raised a wife for himself. On the way to school, Naruto's character was slightly affected. Near the end of the year, he completed a task given by the clan, and arranged a real combat test for himself. It seems not much, but in fact, it took him a lot of time to complete each task. And now, at the age of 6, he is finally about to usher in the second transformation. The research on this progress bar has always been in his mind. But whether it was from the diet, or strengthening the intensity of practice, or even really treating this progress bar as an experience bar and killing enemies to improve it, there was no trend of growth. It was as if this experience bar was more like a timer, which would only grow with the passage of time. So later, Ryosuke didn't pay too much attention to it, but would check what stage this progress had reached after getting up every day. And recently, this progress has finally reached near perfection. In order not to let his transformation be completed in the classroom or in the outside world, exposing his own differences, Ryosuke took a month off and waited for the transformation to come at home. Father, there is something more important that I need to explain to you in advance. After lunch, Ryosuke called him when Hinata Hiyashi just got up and planned to go back to the study to work. Come to the study. Hinata Hiyashi's footsteps paused for a moment, turned his head to look at him, and after leaving a word, he started again. After he left, only Ryosuke and Hanabi were left in the cafeteria. Ryosuke looked at Hanabi, who was sitting on a special high chair at the dining table, and was stuffing food into her mouth with a small spoon. Hanabi, eat slowly. Auntie Liang will come to accompany you later. Hanabi's cheeks were bulging with rice stuffed in her mouth, like a hamster. She could only nod obediently, and her mouth was no longer able to speak back. He picked up a tissue with a smile and helped her wipe the rice grains from her mouth. Then Ryosuke left the dining room. He first came to the kitchen and called the housekeeper Liang to accompany Hanabi, and then he walked towards the study. Dong, dong, dong. Knocked on the wooden door of the study, and Hinata Hiyashi's voice came from inside. He opened the door and walked in. His father was already sitting at the desk, waiting for him to come. As soon as he sat down, Hinata Hiyashi across from him asked impatiently, "Is it about training?" Although he didn't know the details, he could more or less guess a little from Ryosuke's request for leave. Yes, Ryosuke nodded. Actually, I have had some problems with my health recently. Instantly, the moment this sentence came out, he could clearly feel the strong emotional fluctuations in his father. What's going on? He frowned and asked in a deep voice. I can feel that my body will change in the near future, just like my Byakugan changed a few years ago. Ryosuke explained with a chuckle, but this is not necessarily bad news. Change? Hinata Hiyashi frowned and was stunned. You mean, regressing to the ancestors again? But soon, he denied this idea, but your Byakugan is already at the same level as the founder of the Hyuga clan in the history of the Hyuga records. Although it has not yet fully grown up and possessed the devastating power in the records, you can already see through the future. If it is a regress again, then perhaps it should not be called regress, but evolution. Hinata Hiyashi's expression suddenly became enthusiastic. Regression is a change that occurs when the bloodline is extremely superior, and the ability of the ancestors is regained. But now, Ryosuke's situation should not be said to be reversion. In terms of ability, he is likely to surpass his ancestors and get further evolution. Maybe. Ryosuke's smile was a little awkward. In fact, strictly speaking, his current Byakugan is slightly inferior to the real Otsutsuki. After all, in fact, he has not yet mastered the ability to see through the future. This is just Ryosuke's nonsense to deceive his father in order to make up for his understanding of the plot. But this is not important. For the time being, he himself does not understand what kind of changes his transformation will bring to his body. Big? About what time? Hinata Hiyashi suppressed the excitement in his heart and asked in a low voice. But his words still couldn't help but tremble. This kind of thing really makes him excited. As the current patriarch of the Hyuga clan, it is really difficult for him to suppress his emotions to have a younger generation like Ryosuke who brings him surprises from time to time. Ryosuke's bloodline evolves and transforms again and again, which means that his daughter and his offspring in the future will have the possibility of inheriting this talent. The rise of the Hyuga clan will start from his generation. I can't predict this, Ryosuke said helplessly, so I took leave at home recently, just to avoid the situation where I am outside when problems arise. Then stay at home. Anyway, going to school doesn't make any sense for you. You can teach Hinata to do the things you said. She has indeed made a lot of progress recently. When Hyuga Hiyashi mentioned Hinata, his tone became a little strange. The daughter he looked down on, after losing his control, has the possibility of rising, which makes him doubt his own educational methods. The main reason I came to you today is that I may have some abnormalities during the transformation process, so I informed you in advance to avoid you worrying. Ryosuke explained the purpose of this explanation. When he first transformed, he was a person who was not noticed, so it didn't matter. But now for the second time, his identity is already a member of the Hyuga clan, and he is the son-in-law that Hyuga Hiyashi cares about the most. If he is in the clan territory and his body is abnormal, it will undoubtedly attract the attention of Hyuga Hiyashi. So Ryosuke needs to report the possible situation in advance, so as not to. Just thinking of this, he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his heart, and the chakra in his body was like hot magma, surging and boiling in his body. Almost without hesitation, he closed his eyes. And I don't know when, the progress bar in his mind has reached 100%. Transformation started at this moment. Thump, thump. The violent beating of the heart inside sounded in Ryosuke's ears. In addition to the heartbeat, he could even hear the sound of blood flowing in his body like a rolling Yangtze River. The sound of bones creaking. The sound of internal organs gurgling. These extremely subtle sounds that only exist inside the body were infinitely magnified in his mind. This abrupt physical change made Ryosuke unable to say anything before he was overwhelmed by the uncontrollable pain. What's wrong, Ryosuke? In the blurred vision, Ryosuke could see Hinata Hiyashi across a desk, and he appeared beside him in just a blink of an eye. His expression was very flustered, and his tone was full of worry. And the chair he was originally sitting on seemed to be directly shaken away by the huge movement, and directly smashed on the wall behind, and scattered into several pieces of wooden boards. No wonder Ryosuke could perceive the surrounding environment so well while enduring severe pain. At some point, his Byakugan opened involuntarily the moment his body began to change. Even if he didn't want to notice the surrounding environment and wanted to focus on the changes in his body, there was no way. All the situations were like pieces of data code, forcibly input into his mind, forcing him to spend some time to deal with them. Lying on the ground, Ryosuke clenched his fists and curled up. Beside him, the usually old-fashioned and serious Hyuga Hiyashi had disappeared, replaced by a face full of tension. He squatted beside him, somewhat at a loss. The Byakugan had already opened, and he could see the terrible situation in Ryosuke's body, but he was powerless. His two arms were stagnant in midair. He didn't know whether he should find a medical ninja to come over, but he was afraid of disturbing Ryosuke, so he didn't dare to move at all. This was the first time that Hyuga Hiyashi saw Ryosuke showing this expression. Usually, this precocious and reassuring child always had a calm smile. This situation in front of him made him feel a little tormented. After all, this was the child he watched grow up. Although he was not his own child, he was also his son-in-law. And the weight that Ryosuke occupied in his heart was no less than Hinata and his family, and even more. Come on, Ryosuke. There was no way to do anything. Hyuga Hiyashi could only squat silently beside and cheer Ryosuke up. And Ryosuke, he was in pain now. It was completely different from the first transformation. When the progress bar reached the full value for the first time, his pain was more in his eyes, and it didn't last long. It took less than half a day to complete the transformation process. But this time was different. This time, not only was his eyes swollen and painful as if they were about to burst, but his whole body was experiencing tearing pain. Not only around the eye sockets, the veins were exposed because of the opening of the white eyes, but also in many places on his body, the veins were exposed because of excessive force. Sweat had already soaked his clothes, and his pale hair was like seaweed floating on the water. However, Ryosuke did not release the pain in his heart by shouting, but gritted his teeth and endured the pain. Although part of his mind was affected by the surrounding environment, most of his thoughts were still paying attention to the changes in his body. As time passed, the pain intensified, and the changes to the body caused by this transformation became more and more obvious. The strength of the mind and body was improving. The flexibility and strength of the limbs were also changing. The ability of the Byakugan was improved, and it was more significant than the last time, and the range of perception was significantly expanded. If there was any emotion that could make Ryosuke ignore the pain in such severe pain, it was the excitement of watching his strength increase rapidly in a short period of time. The joy and excitement were high, and Ryosuke clearly felt his changes, and he suddenly felt that the pain was reduced a lot. He was not a person with special hobbies, but if this kind of pain could bring about an increase in strength, he didn't mind. Originally, in the eyes of Hinata Hiyashi, Ryosuke, who looked painful and seemed to be enduring unbearable pain, suddenly seemed to have signs of improvement. Although he still clenched his fists, as if he was fighting this change with all his strength, the emotion in his eyes was clearly different from the pain just now. When the situation in Ryosuke's body stabilized, 3 days had passed. Time passed quickly. Although he didn't know the exact time, the alternation of day and night in the outside world still made him understand how many days had passed. During these 3 days, his father was almost always by his side. No one was allowed to enter the study, including Hinata and Hanabi. Every time he ate, he would use the shadow clone to deliver food to the room. Although Ryosuke didn't have the ability to eat every time, the food never stopped, and each time it was more abundant than the last. In short, Hyuga Hiyashi watched over Ryosuke for as long as it took him to transform. He stayed with him almost every step of the way, and his body was tense so that he could respond to any emergency at any time. He never relaxed. It seemed, it was over. Ryosuke's curled body began to slowly stretch out. In Hyuga Hiyashi's eyes, he struggled to get up from the ground little by little. Half squatting and making a horse stance, he supported his knees with both hands and straightened his back little by little. Drops of sweat as big as beans slid down Ryosuke's cheeks and dripped onto the ground. But his face returned to his previous smile, and this time his smile was brighter than any other time. I seemed to have become a lot stronger. A hoarse voice with a dry throat sounded from Ryosuke's mouth. Although the pain was still there, the huge changes in his body were slowly subsiding, and the organs began to resume their normal functions, and the blood flow became slow. Everything in his body was slowly returning to calm. "What do you want to eat? I'll get you a glass of water," Hinata Hiyashi asked nervously. "Thank you, father. I'm a little hungry." Ryosuke nodded gratefully. After 3 days without eating, even ordinary people would feel hungry, not to mention that he had experienced a transformation that broke through the limit in this process. "Call me if you need anything. I'll go find Alyong to prepare it for you," Hinata Hiyashi said quickly, and the person had disappeared in the house. He even used the instant body technique to move, covering the chakra on the soles of his feet to increase speed. The love that Hinata Hiyashi originally didn't know how to express, or was embarrassed to express, had been completely exhausted in these 3 days. This feeling of being cared for was very comfortable, and Ryosuke relaxed his body. While talking, the changes in his body had completely stabilized. In his mind, the progress bar had returned to 0 again. If nothing unexpected happened, the next transformation should be 3 years later, that is, when he was 9 years old. The transformation ended at noon. After a while of eating and drinking, Ryosuke took a comfortable bath and then came to the training ground. And Hyuga Hiyashi also took advantage of this short time to rest for a while. These days, he didn't even blink for a few seconds, just sitting in the study, guarding Ryosuke. Afternoon. In the training ground exclusively occupied by the Hyuga clan, Hyuga Hiyashi had been waiting for a long time. With a pair of dark circles under his eyes, although he was mentally exhausted, his tone was full of impatience and asked, "How is it? Are there any changes in your body?" Hyuga Hiyashi was the one who witnessed the whole process of Ryosuke's transformation, and he was still in the state of opening his white eyes. To be honest, this process is very wonderful. There is no process of training, but under this change, every organ of Ryosuke's body seems to have independent consciousness and begins to improve itself. Almost every second, he can feel the change in Ryosuke's physical strength. But specifically, Hyuga Hiyashi still wanted to hear Ryosuke's feelings. "I'll give you an answer through actual actions," Ryosuke said with a chuckle, and in the next second, his body disappeared from Hyuga Hiyashi's sight. With almost no hesitation, Hyuga Hiyashi opened his Byakugan, and only then could he see Ryosuke's figure from a few dozen meters away. Pure physical speed. He soon saw what Ryosuke called a change. He did not use the amplification of chakra, but his pure physical speed now has the same level as when the chakra was amplified. The next moment, when the chakra in Ryosuke's body surged and flowed through his body, and began to amplify various functions of his body, his speed increased again. His figure once again disappeared in front of Hyuga Hiyashi. Frowning, he poured more chakra into his Byakugan. When the range of Hyuga Hiyashi's Byakugan's insight expanded several times, reaching the limit that his eyes could bear, he once again captured Ryosuke's figure. This means that in the next actual combat training with Ryosuke, he must exert 100% of his strength and face the battle seriously to ensure that he will not lose in the process of fighting. Boom! At this moment, in the dense forest of the training ground, a towering ancient tree was directly broken from the trunk like a warning sign that was pushed down. Dust flew, and among the scattered birds and beasts, Ryosuke slowly retracted his slightly numb shoulders. In this attack, he also relied on pure physical strength. Each of these ancient trees has a history of more than 100 years, and its hardness is far beyond the comparison of those seedlings. But it was so easy, he directly broke the tree trunk with pure physical strength, without the help of chakra or any ninjutsu power. Slowly twisting his shoulders, Ryosuke could feel how huge the recoil force brought by the previous impact was. In the previous attack, he did not use fists or elbows, which are relatively strong parts of the human body. Instead, he tested the strength of his body while testing his strength. He directly used his body to hit the tree trunk, and did not use any force techniques in the process. In this case, only some traces were left on the surface of his body, and the internal muscles, bones, and meridians were not affected too much, just slightly numb. Speed and strength have been improved, and so has the strength of the body. Ryosuke stretched his body. Unlike the first transformation, when only his Byakugan and blood changed, this time, not only his eyes changed, but also his body changed to a great extent. Next is the Byakugan. Turning back, Ryosuke's Byakugan directly penetrated the woods in front of him and saw Hinata Hiyashi outside the forest. Eye to eye, he nodded gently, opened his mouth and said a word silently. Please step back. In the distance, facing his words, Hyuga Hiyashi was obviously stunned for a moment, and then he stepped back 100 meters and entered a state of combat readiness to deal with unexpected situations. In his field of vision, Ryosuke closed his eyes after seeing him ready. Boom! Before Hyuga Hiyashi could figure out what he wanted to do, the roar was deafening. The nearby birds and beasts fled in all directions in the roar. With Ryosuke as the center, all the trees and land within 100 meters of the radius at this moment seemed to be crushed by a meteorite falling from the sky, and they were half shorter out of thin air. And all the living things in this area, whether hares, insects, or even birds in the sky, were turned into pools of bloody mud in an instant. God, miracle! Hyuga Hiyashi stared at everything in front of him with his eyes wide open. It all happened too fast, with almost no signs, and he didn't even have time to observe the changes in Ryosuke's chakra. Such might is like the kind of destructive power that only ancient ninjas possessed in the history of Hyuga. In recent years, only the two brothers Uchiha Madara and Senju Hashirama have such god-like power. Sure enough, Uchiha and Senju have it, so how could they not have it in Hyuga? Hyuga Hiyashi looked at Ryosuke with eager eyes. In the forest, Ryosuke opened his eyes and saw devastation in front of him. He raised his hands and looked at his palms. There is still some chakra in his body, and everything in front of him is the might after compressing the range of perception. However, the pressure is more fluent in use. Could it be, am I really on the same path as Kagaya Otsutsuki? Ryosuke frowned, feeling a little confused. He expected that his eyes would change after the transformation. But the improvement was in the proficiency of the abilities he had already mastered, which really made him unexpected. Nowadays, whether it is illusion or coercion, it is smoother than before, as if it has been run in for a long time. No, that's not right, these transformations have nothing to do with Kagaya Otsutsuki. But soon, Ryosuke denied this idea. How could it be so coincidental that he just thought about it and embarked on the old path of Kagaya Otsutsuki, and it was two different techniques of illusion and coercion. In this case, the progress bar in his mind is aimed at, maybe not his own bloodline, but his own abilities. Maybe, as he thought at the beginning, this progress bar is more like a limiter, and after reaching the limit, it will help him unlock a certain degree of restrictions. Or the improvement of bloodline, perhaps the techniques he has mastered, and the strength of his body. But the actual ability needs to be mastered by himself. For example, illusion and coercion, he spent time and energy to develop them, so after the transformation, his use of these two techniques has been improved. Even the strength of his body has been improved. On the other hand, when he first transformed, he had not yet undergone high-intensity training, but only paid special attention to the eye technique, so he transformed and gained an improvement in blood and a Byakugan closer to Otsutsuki. 3 years is a cumulative process, and the efforts made in the cumulative process will determine the final result. This is a progress bar that can only be rewarded with hard work. If you don't work hard, the possible transformation will be very small. This is the second transformation, and Ryosuke speculates about the progress bar in his mind. Of course, whether it is actually true or not, we have to wait and see the third transformation to draw a conclusion. And this time, Ryosuke will pay attention to the direction of his efforts and the direction he has not spent his mind on during these 3 years of practice, to see if the gap between the two will be big at that time. How do you feel? Seeing Ryosuke coming out of the dead forest, Hyuga Hiyashi hurried forward and asked, will the technique just now put a great burden on the body? Any use of power will have a certain price. According to the history of Hyuga, during the Warring States period, Uchiha Madara was blind for a period of time after awakening the Mangekyo Sharingan. It is suspected that after awakening the Mangekyo, the body could not bear the burden of consumption. Although it is unknown how he solved this problem later, Hyuga Hiyashi is very afraid that Ryosuke will also encounter such a thing. After all, it has been thousands of years since Ryosuke was able to evolve the Byakugan and acquire new abilities. Father, don't worry, I feel very good. Apart from the consumption of chakra, my body has no other burden. Ryosuke replied with a chuckle. Although he made a huge noise just now, in fact, the chakra in his body has not been completely consumed. In other words, even if he does it again now, he can do it completely. In this transformation, both the body and the spirit have been specially upgraded, and the ability of the Byakugan has also been increased, which means that the amount of chakra has also been improved. Ryosuke's current chakra amount is about 3 times that of the past, which has surpassed the level of ordinary ninjas. You should pay more attention when using the Byakugan. But Hyuga Hiyashi was obviously worried about this. Many diseases caused by bloodline boundaries are accumulated from some small details. You should pay more attention. If those subtle burdens accumulate and explode one day, I'm afraid your body can't bear it. Ryosuke nodded. I understand. He may know better than Hyuga Hiyashi how terrible the so-called bloodline disease is. Whether it is the corpse vein, ice release, or Sharingan, Samsara Eye, there are obvious bloodline sequelae. So without Hyuga Hiyashi saying more, he will pay attention. In the past, every time he trained, he paid great attention to the changes in his body when using the Byakugan, but when the chakra was sufficient, using the Byakugan did not bring any burden to his body. Whether it was vision or body. Go back first, it's almost time to rest. Hyuga Hiyashi scanned Ryosuke up and down with the Byakugan again, and after confirming that there was no problem, he closed the Byakugan. These past few days, I've been the same as you, and I haven't slept a wink. Go back and rest quickly, there's still some time before dinner. Ryosuke nodded, and also retracted his eye roll. 2 figures, one tall and one short, slowly walked out of the training ground. As for the commotion caused by Ryosuke just now, someone will naturally come to clean it up. I won't have dinner. I have some accumulated affairs recently, and I have to get up to deal with them in the evening. I may have to stay up all night tonight. I'll eat after I get up. Hinata Hiyashi looked very tired, and his walking posture was not as straight as before, and was a little loose. Let's get up tomorrow and deal with it. Ryosuke looked at him worriedly. Dealing with these things consumes energy. If you don't get enough rest, it will have a great impact on your body. If it's just some trivial things, I can put it off until tomorrow. Hinata Hiyashi's tired expression slowly returned to seriousness. He turned his head and looked at Ryosuke. Just in the few days when you transformed, the Uchiha clan was exterminated, and you will never guess who the murderer is. Uchiha Itachi. The smile on Ryosuke's face was restrained, but he spit out a name without hesitation. As for this, Hyuga Hiyashi, who wanted to keep it a secret, paused, but soon smiled helplessly. Yes, your eyes can see it, but why don't you try to stop it from happening? Although Uchiha is our long-term rival, their extermination may not be a good thing for us. But it may not be a bad thing. Ryosuke smiled and replied, we Hyuga should not get involved in this matter. Father, you should go to bed early, or get up tomorrow to deal with those matters. Unknowingly, they have come to the door of their home from the training ground. Okay, listen to you. Hyuga Hiyashi hesitated for a moment and nodded, but I want to remind you that the story behind this is not that simple. There may be the shadow of other people in the village. Regarding this matter, the intelligence materials sent by the clan members are all in my study. You can go and have a look. In the future, you don't have to report to me about the things in the study. You can read them at will. There is a secret door at the innermost of the highest row of the 3rd bookshelf. There are some more important information inside. Pay special attention to the red and black volumes. Okay, Ryosuke nodded. After entering the house, Hyuga Hiyashi went back to his room to rest. And he was not tired mentally or physically because of the torture during this period. Instead, he was full of energy because of the transformation. Hinata hadn't returned home yet. He thought about it for a while, but he didn't go to play with Hanabi, but went directly to the study. Following his father's instructions, Ryosuke found the secret door on the 3rd bookshelf. Inside the secret door, there were several scrolls of different colors. There were no other colors. He directly took out the black and red scrolls his father mentioned. He came down from the elevated ladder and came to the desk. He sat down where his father used to sit and turned on the desk lamp. First, he spread out the red scroll and put it on the table. At first glance, Ryosuke saw the 4 big characters Sarutobi Hiruzen. The smile on his face became even bigger. Sure enough, the intelligence about some high-level people in the village was definitely not as simple as what Ryosuke had come into contact with before. What he had read through the intelligence chain before were all well-known trivial matters. And this scroll recorded everything about the third-generation Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen from studying in the ninja school until he graduated from school and became the apprentice of the second-generation Hokage, and then became the third-generation Hokage, and so on. Regarding this record, the first organizer was Ryosuke's grandfather in the strict sense, that is, the father of Hyuga Hiyashi. The content of these records is very messy, mixed with some views and opinions of the two organizers. However, these views and opinions have been changing all the time. Sometimes they think Sarutobi Hiruzen is a hero who is willing to give everything for the village, but sometimes he will become a selfish hypocrite. There is no absolute right or wrong in the world, there are only different standpoints. Under the light, Ryosuke sat at the table where his father usually worked, his fingers pressed on the scroll, and slid down as he read. I don't know when he started to look at things from the perspective of a bystander, so that he can understand the essence of things more clearly and make corresponding correct judgments based on his own situation. As the Hokage of the village, Sarutobi Hiruzen made many decisions, some good and some bad. He made the decision to sacrifice the lives of a few people in exchange for victory in the war. There were also cases where he led the village to fight a desperate battle, and even left a suicide note in advance, ready to sacrifice himself. But if you look at his decisions from the perspective of a bystander, from a perspective where you don't know the results, in fact, most of the time they are for the benefit of the village. Although these decisions may not be good for Hyuga. But these records are not complete. The victory or defeat of many battlefields always lacks an important part at a critical moment, lacking a little bit of chips that can determine the situation. A Wonderful Life. Ryosuke read very quickly, and after reading word by word, less than half an hour had passed. The amount of information was very rich, but he had memorized it completely. Then what happened next? He set his eyes on the black scroll. In fact, he didn't need to open it, he already knew who the person on this scroll was. After opening it, there was almost no surprise that the name on this scroll was Danzo Shimura. This is a name that only a few people in the village remember. When most people mention this name, their first reaction is that they don't know him. But if you talk about the history of Konoha village in detail and talk about the strong men who galloped on the battlefield in the past, probably someone will remember his name and what he did. If Sarutobi Hiruzen is a conservative person who considers problems from the perspective of the village, then Danzo Shimura is definitely a radical person who is willing to put the village in an extremely dangerous environment in exchange for greater benefits for the village. He is a very capable person, but also an extremely dangerous person. On the other side of the desk, there is the recent extermination of the Uchiha Clan. As someone who knows the future, Ryosuke knows very well that Shimura Danzo is behind this matter. As a major force in the village, the Uchiha Clan lacks the main force within Konoha. Even if they are unstable, Sarutobi Hiruzen will still try to consider the best of both worlds. But Shimura Danzo will not. He will not tolerate anything that is not good for the village. Since this force is unstable, it is very likely that Konoha will turn the tables when Konoha is in danger, so just take advantage of the fact that Konoha still has the strength to clean it up. This Shimura Danzo does not seem to care about the impact on Konoha after losing this power. From his past performance and what he may do in the future, Ryosuke thinks that he may have a mentality. That is, as long as he is there, Konoha will not be in trouble. But he does have the capital to be arrogant. Reading through Shimura Danzo's past carefully, Ryosuke can compare many missing parts of Sarutobi Hiruzen's information from his intelligence information. Since the late period of the First Ninja World War, when Sarutobi Hiruzen took office as the third-generation Hokage, there have been hundreds of battles of all sizes in the Second Ninja World War and the Third Ninja World War, which affected the entire ninja world. Among them, there are many battles that Konoha should have lost, but they won inexplicably. These processes determine the battle situation as an important bargaining chip, which Ryosuke did not see in Sarutobi Hiruzen's record scroll. But he learned a lot in Shimura Danzo's record scroll, but many of them are shameful. In the late period of the First Ninja World War, after the sacrifice of the second-generation Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen took up the banner and joined his contemporary partners Shimura Danzo, Mito Kato En, Utatane Kaharu, Akamichi Tofu, and Uchiha Kagami to counterattack the Hidden Cloud Village. In the end, he won the battle and established his position and the short-term stability of Konoha village. During this war, Shimura Danzo used the lives and supplies of some Konoha ninjas to alienate the Kurigakure and Iwagakure, leaving them to fight each other, leaving them no time to attack Konoha while they were at war with Kumogakure. This was a strategy, but it was an ignominious one, so he did not receive any awards or merits. The victory and end of the Second Shinobi World War and the Third Shinobi World War all had his shadow behind them. He was like the dark side of Sarutobi Hiruzen, shouldering all the negatives. So, he was indeed capable of being arrogant. However, compared to Sarutobi Hiruzen, who lived in the sun, there was very little information about Shimura Danzo. Even the intelligence chain of 2 generations of the Hyuga clan has only been collected a little bit, so Ryosuke actually doesn't know much, and he can't be sure that his guess is right. This is the real ninja world. Compared to the memory, looking at the world from the perspective of the cheerful Naruto, Ryosuke now sees it more comprehensively and more realistically. The saying that those who play politics are dirty is not just a casual remark. Perhaps from the perspective of the civilians of Konoha village, or those who are on the same path as Sarutobi Hiruzen and are willing to sacrifice everything for the village, Sarutobi Hiruzen is a good leader. His existence protects the interests of the majority of people and allows the majority of people to live in a relatively stable environment. But for those people and families whose interests have been violated or even endangered, he is a complete hypocrite. He is a person who only raises a sunny smile in front of the majority. However, Ryosuke can understand this point. After all, many things cannot be completed to take into account everyone. As a leader, he can only choose the majority. It's much more complicated than I thought. Fortunately, I didn't get involved in this matter. After learning about these things, Ryosuke became more and more certain of his decision. Anyway, he was not familiar with Uchiha. Uchiha Itachi had only met him a few times, and Uchiha Sasuke always gave him a bad face. Even if Uchiha no longer posed a threat to the village, he did not plan to contact Uchiha Sasuke, the orphan. As for, originally he and Hyuga Hiyashi had been worried about whether the Hyuga family would be suspected of being the only one without the Uchiha as a check and balance. Ryosuke was not worried at all now. I don't know if it's because he has been considering more and more things recently. Ryosuke has become more and more familiar with things and looks at things from the perspective of an observer. When he looked at those things that he had worried about before, he suddenly felt that they were not so complicated. For example, the current status of their Hyuga clan in the village. Uchiha is a strong destabilizing factor, and the clan is even plotting a coup to return to the power center of Konoha. Danzo Shimura, who can't tolerate any sand in his eyes, can't tolerate such things, and Sarutobi Hiruzen, the 3rd-generation Hokage, can't tolerate it either. So, although he didn't want Konoha to lose such a powerful fighting force, he was always hesitant. But he undoubtedly acquiesced to Danzo's behavior. This village is full of Anbu, and his spies are everywhere. Some more important people, such as who Naruto contacts every day, he knows everything, not to mention Danzo, who is more important than Naruto. You have to know that in Sarutobi Hiruzen's heart, although he relies on Danzo, he is also wary of Danzo. However, Sarutobi Hiruzen can tolerate Danzo's attack on Uchiha, which does not mean that he can tolerate the decline of the only remaining I-technique family in the village Hyuga. When Ryosuke looked at Hyuga and Konoha from the perspective of an observer, he found that the situation of the Hyuga clan was not as complicated as he and his father imagined. The outside world was eyeing the Fire Country with covetous eyes and had always had a heart for the Fire Country. However, Konoha's internal forces had been consuming combat power. Whether it was the death of the 4th Hokage or the extermination of the Uchiha clan, it had a significant impact on the village. Hyuga was different from Uchiha. Although their clan was proud of their outstanding talents, they were still relatively low-key and easygoing when they came into contact with people in the village. Although the Hyuga clan also had the idea of invading the power center of the village, they had always hidden it well. As for the people of the branch family, because they were crowned as birds in a cage, they could not have free thoughts like the Uchiha. When Hyuga Hiyashi gave orders and requirements to treat other people in the village kindly, they could only do so. Under such circumstances, the image of Hyuga in the village was well maintained. It is also for this reason that they were not driven to the outskirts of the village like the Uchiha, but have always been in the center of the village and respected by many villagers. Not to mention the attitude of the civilians in the village towards the Hyuga, even many ninjas in the village have received favors from the Hyuga. You should know that the role of the Byakugan on the battlefield is very huge and can play a decisive role in the battle. Many ninjas have been saved by the Hyuga, and many victories are also due to the perception of the Hyuga. As a powerful family in the village, if the Uchiha clan is exterminated, everyone may applaud, but if something happens to the Hyuga, most people are still worried. The Hyuga is equivalent to the eyes of Konoha. Without these eyes, the battlefields in the future will lose many advantages. Therefore, in this situation of external and internal troubles, the status of their clan is still relatively high. As long as they maintain the previous stability and kindness, Konoha will be wary of them, but in fact they will not take action against them because there is no reason. Konoha village is not intolerant of geniuses or strong people, but intolerant of those unstable factors and those who want to engage in individualism without considering the interests of the group. Even if there is, it can only be Shimura Danzo, because Sarutobi Hiruzen is confident that he can control him. Under the desk lamp, Ryosuke's face is expressionless and his eyes are a little cold. When all the intelligence information is gathered in his mind and he thinks about and sorts out these situations, he needs to maintain absolute rationality. Only when there is no personal emotion, standing at any angle, and not considering that he is a Hyuga, can he make the most favorable judgment. Dong dong dong. The high-speed thinking was interrupted, and Ryosuke's cold eyes directly penetrated the wooden door and saw the situation outside the house. Then, his cold eyes slowly converged and became soft. Here it comes. Ryosuke loudly signaled to the people outside the house, and he heard it. Quickly put away the two scrolls and put them back to their original place. He turned off the desk lamp and came to the door. Gently turning the doorknob, Ryosuke opened the door. Outside, the girl's long lavender hair fluttered with the airflow when the door opened. Hinata widened her eyes and raised her head to look at Ryosuke's face. Ryosuke, you've grown taller. Seemingly having a natural alertness to the study, her voice became very soft and her tone was extremely cautious. Although it was only 3 days, it seemed like a long time had passed since they last saw each other. Yeah, something happened recently, and I've grown a lot taller. Ryosuke lowered his head, looked at Hinata, who was a head shorter, and smiled softly, reaching out to pat her little head. Then, he turned his gaze to the dark night outside the house. Is it already night? The study had no windows, and only the desk lamp provided light in the dim room. He was immersed in his thoughts and did not develop his perception. He did not realize that so much time had passed. Hinata half closed her eyes and enjoyed being petted like a kitten. Auntie Liang said you've already come out once, so I came to ask you if you want to have dinner. Of course. Ryosuke nodded, took back his hand from her head and walked out. Behind him, Hinata looked in a good mood, jumping and following him. What have you been doing recently? Father won't let us see you, and won't tell us the reason. Hanabi and I are very worried about you. Because my practice has reached a relatively important stage, I need a relatively quiet environment to do some insights. I'm sorry I didn't tell you in advance and made you worried. It's okay, but a lot of things happened in the school during your absence. That Uzumaki Naruto turned out to be so powerful. He won the first place in the recent practical course, and I can't beat him. But it's mainly because Uchiha Sasuke didn't go to class. Something seems to have happened at his home. While chatting and listening to Hinata telling interesting stories in school, they walked towards the cafeteria. Did Naruto get first place? Ryosuke was a little surprised. After all, he had never fought with Naruto, let alone seen him take action. His impression of him was temporarily limited to the last place in the original work and the top 3 in the theoretical courses in the current timeline. Although he knew that Naruto had changed a lot in personality from the original timeline, he didn't know his actual strength. Unconsciously, he asked a few more questions. The main thing is that Naruto's wind escape ninjutsu is very powerful. Hinata said distressedly. I haven't learned the 8 trigrams empty palm yet. I can't get close to him just relying on the soft fist. And his chakra seems to be abundant. The use of various ninjutsu continues, and I can't save the situation. Even if I see his skills through the Byakugan, I can't respond well. In addition, his physical skills are actually not weak, and his physical fitness is much better than ordinary people. It sounds like his strength is very comprehensive. Listening to Hinata's narration, Ryosuke was a little surprised, but thinking about it carefully, the difference between the current Naruto and the original is still quite large. Under his guidance, Naruto now often entangles the third Hokage. Although there is no formal apprenticeship, in fact, the guidance of the third Hokage to him is no different from that of a direct disciple. Naruto himself has good talent, but because of the influence of the Nine Tails chakra, he is very poor in control and cannot use ninjutsu well. Now, with the guidance of Sarutobi Hiruzen, a ninjutsu doctor, it is inevitable that his strength will surpass his peers. Chapter 51. I have submitted my application and I am ready to graduate early. After his transformation, Ryosuke looked more mature in both appearance and body shape. In order to avoid too much physical change and arouse suspicion from others, even though his second transformation was complete, he continued to stay at home and returned to school after a month of vacation. When he came back this time, he quickly discovered the difference around him. Originally, those who would monitor Naruto nearby disappeared, and even Sarutobi Hiruzen did not pay attention to Naruto and observe him with the telescope technique for a whole day. And when school was over, Naruto, who had not spoken to him, suddenly turned around and spoke. For a moment, Ryosuke was a little unresponsive and tilted his head to look at him strangely. Although the peaceful life in school is very good, I have accumulated a lot of theoretical knowledge and practical experience. Naruto explained with a smile, but unfortunately, school learning is always limited. During the practical test a few days ago, I realized that I had become much stronger than most people without realizing it. It's time for me to leave school and get in touch with the outside world. Although there are not many opportunities for actual combat, because no one is willing to fight with him. But standing next to the training ground after school every day to observe and learn has taught him a lot. It seems that because of the nine-tailed fox in his body, his chakra amount is much more than that of ordinary people. With the ability to skillfully use the ninjutsu taught by his grandfather, he is invincible in almost every actual combat. Nowadays, no student in the school has the ability to match him in chakra amount. In battle, he is like a mobile turret, crushing everyone except Ryosuke and Sasuke, who asked for leave at the same time, but this is the only thing that makes him feel sorry. Ryosuke, can I fight with you? Naruto asked with some anticipation. He knew very well that Ryosuke's strength was not as ordinary as he showed in school, and he was very likely the strongest in the whole grade. But because he knew that his identity was sensitive, he never dared to contact Ryosuke too much, so as not to affect him. But now Naruto could feel that it seemed that because of the improvement of his strength, the third-generation grandfather was much more confident in him, thinking that he could control the nine tails, so he withdrew a lot of surveillance. Now, it should be. I won't fight with you. But Ryosuke directly rejected Naruto's proposal. You go find Uchiha Sasuke, he is your opponent with the same strength, you can learn a lot from him. There is no point in bullying a child, let alone such a dazzling child. Sarutobi Hiruzen is no longer very wary of Naruto, and Ryosuke does not intend to fight him. But, Naruto hesitated for a moment and was about to say something. But Ryosuke had already stood up. I can see that a practical test has made you feel so inflated that you have forgotten how to calm down and think. His face was restrained, and Naruto kept smiling in front of him, making him feel like he was looking in the mirror. I advise you that arrogance is the biggest taboo for ninjas, and it will make you fail in the mission. He looked down at Naruto. His eyes were already opened unconsciously, and the momentum on his body had locked him invisibly. I always think you are a good person, I hope you will not disappoint me in your future growth. The tone was indifferent, as if he was indifferent to everything in the world. Opposite him, Naruto sat on a chair, cold sweat visibly oozing from his forehead, and the smile on his face froze directly. This feeling of being locked reminded him of a long time ago, when it was also such a time after school. At that time, He was like now, unable to move his body, unable to open his mouth to say a word, and unable to mobilize the chakra in his body. What kind of power is this? Naruto still hasn't figured it out. In this case, can he really fight with Ryosuke? Indeed, he has been a little arrogant recently. The date for the application assessment is coming. Remember to remind me. When you become a genin, I will treat you to Ichiraku ramen. Looking at Naruto's stunned look, Ryosuke retracted his eyes, left a word and turned around to walk out of the classroom. Hinata was still waiting for him at the training ground. Wait, without the suppression of that strange power, Naruto finally had the opportunity to speak. Ryosuke stopped and turned around in confusion. Since you don't give me a chance to challenge, can you take me to see Uchiha Sasuke? Naruto stood up seriously, without the smile that he had always imitated Ryosuke on his face. Konoha Hospital, I can't just go in casually with my identity, and I'm not sure if they will help me find Sasuke with my identity. I don't know how long that guy will have to stay in the hospital, but I heard that his body has recovered, but he just can't accept that thing mentally. I don't have extra time to wait for him to return to school. I will leave school after applying in the next few days. It's not good to bully students in the school as a genin. After thinking for a few seconds, Ryosuke quickly made a judgment, okay. Walking openly on the streets of Konoha, Ryosuke followed Hinata and Naruto. He is Naruto's only friend in school. I believe that Konoha's high-level officials such as Sarutobi Hiruzen have known it long ago. But this contact was the result of Naruto's active approach, and they had no way to interfere. In the process of contact, Ryosuke has always maintained the necessary distance, which they also know. Even Sarutobi Hiruzen may be very satisfied with his performance and is very happy that Ryosuke has been pushing Naruto to his side, so he has never talked to Hyuga Hiyashi. Therefore, in addition to the actual battle that may expose Ryosuke's hiding all the time, he now has no big relationship with Naruto in daily life, so he did not refuse this request. It always feels strange, Hinata said in a low voice, holding Ryosuke's hand and following him obediently. The pedestrians on the street, whether ordinary people or ninjas, consciously avoided the three of them. Even if there were some people crowded and prosperous sections of the road, after they appeared, the crowd would quickly make way for them. This gave her an illusion of being the only one in the world. This was the authority that she, as a member of the Hyuga clan, had never had. When Naruto heard her words, his face was a little bitter. The Konoha hospital is in front. I will wait at the door for you to ask about Sasuke's ward before going over. He stopped and looked at Ryosuke. No, just go in. Ryosuke chuckled and shook his head. It's just a visit to a patient. You have a reason and evidence, so what are you afraid of? When he led the two people to Konoha Hospital, Ryosuke could clearly feel that the atmosphere in the hall suddenly solidified. Time seemed to be still. Almost everyone was looking at the door, the ones who had just walked in. The big guys in the hall didn't speak, but the indifference and hatred in their eyes clearly conveyed their emotions. With so many people watching, Hinata's disguise was a little bit difficult to maintain. Her palm was holding Ryosuke's hand nervously, and she almost lowered her head. This kind of gaze and atmosphere really made her panic. Excuse me, where is Uchiha Sasuke's room? But Ryosuke turned a blind eye to the scene in front of him, as if he didn't notice the strange looks of these people, and strode to the counter of the service center with Hinata. After Hinata felt the force of the hand being held back, she felt much more at ease. Room 4. Room 405. The middle-aged woman who was responsible for recording the ward files at the counter was a little hesitant at first, but under the gaze of Ryosuke's white eyes, she still dutifully told the location of the ward. After taking another look at the hospital's internal introduction map and confirming the ward where Uchiha Sasuke was, Ryosuke nodded and said thank you, then turned around and left with the two of them. And it was only after they walked into the corridor that the atmosphere in the hall returned to the way it was before they came in. Why are the eldest lady and young master of the Hyuga family with that person? Look at the beard on his face, maybe. Stop talking, it's bad luck. Thanks to his powerful perception ability, the whispered discussions reached Ryosuke's ears, but did not change his facial expression at all. Ryosuke is really amazing. Naruto, who had been silent since entering the hospital, finally spoke. His voice was no longer as indifferent as usual, but became a little bitter. You can actually deal with those people without changing your expression. Ryosuke did not reply. Although Naruto learned from him well, he was still just a child in his mind. In two lives, there are many things and many people that Ryosuke really has no interest in paying attention to, or rather, he does not want to put his energy on insignificant people or things. But Naruto cannot completely ignore it, instead he cares too much. That is why he will learn from Ryosuke and make himself a gentle person. He is trying to integrate into the group and let everyone recognize his existence. 405. They arrived at ward number 5 on the 4th floor of the hospital without any obstacles. At this time, Ryosuke could clearly feel that Sarutobi Hiruzen's perception had fallen on them for the first time in a long time. It seems that their situation of coming to find Uchiha Sasuke has been reported. Swish. After knocking twice, Ryosuke opened the door of the ward. The ward is not big, just an ordinary single compartment. On the bed, Uchiha Sasuke, who had not been seen for a long time, sat with his back against the bedboard, looking out the window with lifeless eyes. He didn't even seem to notice Ryosuke and the others coming in. Excuse me. Regardless of the fact that Uchiha Sasuke ignored them, Ryosuke was still polite. As he spoke, he led Naruto and the others into the house, and closed the door of the ward. And it was at this time that Uchiha Sasuke slowly turned his head, and his lifeless dead fish eyes moved horizontally to look at Ryosuke and the others. Then, after he saw Ryosuke and Hinata, a hint of coldness flashed in his eyes. Why are you from the Hyuga family here? Are you here to laugh at me? His tone was full of murderous intent, and Sasuke seemed to be venting the fire that had accumulated in his heart during this period. However, it seemed that the mental damage brought to him by Uchiha Itachi had been restored by more than half, and what was left was only a thick shadow. Don't get me wrong, we are just leading the way. Ryosuke ignored his appearance and pulled Hinata to sit on a chair beside him. Although the people had been brought here, they were not in a hurry to leave. I'm here to find you, Uchiha Sasuke. Under Uchiha Sasuke's puzzled gaze, Naruto took a step forward and came to Sasuke. I want to challenge you. He smiled and said the purpose of coming this time. Challenge me. Faced with his smile and words, Sasuke frowned, only to find it harsh. He turned his head and glared at Ryosuke and the other man on the chair. Did you bring this guy here to humiliate me? It can be seen that he didn't know what happened in the school recently. When you asked for leave, Naruto won the first place in the grade with the first place in actual combat and the third place in theory. Ryosuke was not annoyed and explained with a smile. First place. Sasuke turned his head in surprise and looked at the yellow-haired boy in front of him who was smiling and hated no matter how he looked at him. How can such a guy who doesn't even dare to fight in actual combat take the first place? In his eyes, Naruto watched other people's fights in the training ground every day after school. He didn't think that no one was willing to practice with Naruto, but that he didn't have the courage to fight. Actually, I have submitted an application for early graduation assessment. Naruto smiled and explained, no matter what, I don't want to leave regrets in my school life, so I asked Ryosuke to take me to you. The title of the first in this grade can only be deserved if I defeat you. He never mentioned Ryosuke's strength. He knew that Ryosuke wanted to conceal his ability, just like he had concealed a lot. Graduate early, just you. It seemed that the word, graduation early, stimulated Sasuke. He clenched his fists. You only studied for 1 year, and you are qualified to pass the assessment. Ridiculous. As he spoke, he got up from the hospital bed. I accept your challenge. I remember your name is Naruto. Haha, I will let you know what it means to be the top student in the grade and what it means to be a ninja. Ninjas are not something that those embroidered pillows can become. As he said this, he also glanced at Ryosuke and Hinata meaningfully. However, Ryosuke always had a smile on his face, while Hinata always had a blank expression. Naruto hesitated for a moment. Let's make another appointment. Your body. Even in the hospital, I haven't forgotten to exercise every day. Directly interrupting Naruto's words, Sasuke's eyes were very cold. This is an off-campus appointment. Since you want to challenge, you must be prepared to be killed. Are you mentally prepared? The fact that he applied for the graduation examination after only 1 year of study in the ninja school really stimulated him too much. Naruto's posture and actions reminded him of someone. The man who would always keep a gentle smile in front of him, but at the same time made him hate him deeply. If it's convenient, will we be allowed to watch the fight? But at this moment, Ryosuke's voice interrupted his thoughts. Sasuke turned around, looked at the man and woman who stood up, and snorted disdainfully, whatever. There is a vast lawn outside the Konoha village. Under the dim sunset, the sound of the waterfall is very noisy. But compared to the sound of the rushing water, the huge collision sound from time to time nearby is more eye-catching. On the vast lawn, two black shadows are chasing each other. Fire escape, flame bomb. With the flow of seals and chakra in the body, 3 hot fireballs are spit out from Uchiha Sasuke's mouth one after another, shooting towards Naruto. The roar of the fireballs is like a cannonball, clearly sounding in this peaceful environment. And Naruto dodged these fireballs without panic, and then in the gap of dodging, he also made a seal, wind escape, wind cutting technique. The nearly invisible wind escape technique turned the hurricane into a sharp blade that can harvest lives, flew out from the gap between several fireballs, and slashed towards Uchiha Sasuke. But as expected, Naruto's ninjutsu was also easily dodged by Uchiha Sasuke. Sasuke now no longer has the arrogance and contempt he had when he first accepted the challenge. At the beginning of the battle, when he saw Naruto's speed and ninjutsu, he had long since put those emotions behind him and took the battle seriously. Wind escape, big breakthrough. A strong hurricane rose from around Naruto and swept towards Uchiha Sasuke. And this momentum directly brought up a lot of weeds that were not rooted in the soil. Those weeds also had a slight lethality under this hurricane. Without hesitation, Uchiha Sasuke retreated nimbly and withdrew from the range affected by the ninjutsu. While he was running and dodging Naruto's pursuit, he was thinking about how to fight back. Naruto's chakra was stronger than he thought. A little further away, Ryosuke and Hinata stood quietly on a giant tree, opening their white eyes and looking down at the battle. Wow, so amazing. With this level of ninjutsu, Uchiha Sasuke was able to react and retreat in the first place. Hinata widened her eyes and watched the battle. From time to time, she also exclaimed in admiration, her tone full of envy. Under Ryosuke's guidance, she knew very well what her shortcomings were. In the battle, she always lacked the corresponding reaction power, and she always couldn't exert her own strength. But in this battle, she felt that both of them had extraordinary fighting talents. They were like natural ninjas, with extremely sharp fighting intuition and nerve reaction speed. You can do it in the future, as long as you work hard. Ryosuke said with a chuckle, just about to reach out and touch Hinata's hair to comfort her. But the perception brought by the white eyes has stopped him. Little Hinata wants to target them too, it's not easy to catch up with them. A hoarse but kind voice sounded beside the two. I don't know when, an old man in a white robe and a hat has come to their side and stood on the giant tree with them. Third generation grandfather. Ryosuke first pretended to be surprised and took a step back, then asked politely, why are you here? And Hinata next to him also called out obediently. Good boy. Sarutobi Hiruzen smiled and nodded, his face full of age spots wrinkled into a ball. Naruto's graduation assessment application has been passed. I went to his house but didn't find anyone. I heard the noise and came to see, only to find that they were fighting privately here. Naruto just wanted to get the first place in the grade before graduation, not by taking shortcuts. Don't blame him, Ryosuke explained. He didn't have the smiling face he always had, nor the expressionless face when he was relaxed, and he didn't pretend to be nervous for Naruto. He acted very ordinary, as if he had just mentioned it casually. He didn't believe a word of Sarutobi Hiruzen's words. You know, since they met Uchiha Sasuke, the sense of prying around them has never stopped. Rather than saying that Sarutobi Hiruzen came to inform Naruto, it would be better to say that he came to monitor the battle to avoid any accidents. I won't blame him. Facing Ryosuke's casual attitude, Sarutobi Hiruzen was very satisfied. I often heard Naruto talk about you. He said you are his only friends in school. After all, we are deskmates, and I know his situation. My father has mentioned it to Hinata and me. Ryosuke turned his attention back to the battle below. He shouldn't be in that situation. He is the son of a hero. Naruto, very pitiful. Hinata also briefly expressed her opinion, but he works hard and is very strong. Yeah, when mentioning this matter, Sarutobi Hiruzen's original smile was restrained, and he sighed helplessly, but did not explain much. He also turned around and looked at the figure fighting hard below. His eyes were very complicated. The battle below was still going on, and the atmosphere above the giant tree was a little quiet. Ryosuke and Hinata did not take the initiative to talk, and Sarutobi Hiruzen did not speak either. As time passed, the battle situation below began to change from being evenly matched. Uchiha Sasuke's physical strength began to decline, and his chakra was even insufficient. He was still able to keep fighting now, relying entirely on his learning and talent. If it were an ordinary ninja, perhaps he would have lost the battle by now because of the changes in the battle situation. But because of his inner pride, he always insisted on not admitting defeat. It looks like it's over. But persistence is just persistence after all. As bystanders, the three of them knew that the outcome of this battle was decided. At this time, Sarutobi Hiruzen spoke again. Naruto's strength is under my guidance. I am still very confident about his graduation assessment, but I am more hesitant about what kind of companions should be assigned to him after he officially becomes a ninja. I don't know what kind of companions can accept him. Little Ryosuke, have you considered applying for graduation early? Like an old man who is worried about whether his grandson will be bullied on the first day of kindergarten, he wants to find a suitable teammate for Naruto. But his words made Ryosuke alert. I need to accompany Hinata. She is the future head of the family. It is very important for our clan to protect her growth. This is also what my father meant. He chuckled and replied. He had expected that Sarutobi Hiruzen would detect his strength and conceal it. Even without the insight and perspective of the Byakugan, a person's strength can still be judged based on other aspects. But it is more difficult to detect the specific level. So Ryosuke is not worried that Sarutobi Hiruzen will be more suspicious of them, the Hyuga, because of his talent. Because at this time, Hinata's identity and Hyuga's rules will become his umbrella of protection. Really, that's a pity. Sarutobi Hiruzen looked a little disappointed. He took out a scroll from his arms and handed it to Ryosuke. After they finish fighting, give this scroll to Naruto and tell him to take the graduation test tomorrow. Sarutobi Hiruzen left, and the battle came to an end. Although the outcome was already decided. But the result was certainly not that the proud Uchiha Sasuke would voluntarily admit defeat, but that Naruto, with his bruised and swollen pig head, would pin Sasuke to the ground and prevent him from getting up. He was forced to give up resistance in this shameful posture. He really didn't want the two Hyuga family members in the distance to watch him for any longer in this embarrassing state. You are very powerful. After standing up, Naruto approached with a playful smile and stretched out his arm to pull him up. But Sasuke had a cold face, slapped his palm away, and stood up by himself. I'm not so bad at losing. You are indeed much better than me. You can take the title of the first in the grade. Then he paused and spoke again, but I will catch up with you soon. When the time comes, I will let you see why the Uchiha clan is really powerful. From the moment the battle began, he knew that he had underestimated this guy who had never had a sense of presence in the class. He admitted that this guy named Uzumaki Naruto was very powerful, as he could learn so many ninjutsu and had a huge chakra foundation. But this was normal. After all, he became the new top student in the grade after he asked for leave. It was understandable that he had such strength. I hope that day will not be too far away. Naruto smiled and nodded. In this battle, he found that Uchiha Sasuke was also a person who had no ill will towards him. Although in school, the other party gave him the impression of being a rude person. But in actual contact, he was not so annoying. Let's go. After taking a deep look at Naruto, Sasuke dragged his heavy body and turned away. Although he didn't want to admit it, Naruto was really much stronger than him, both in terms of physique and the number of ninjutsu he mastered. The battle just now had exhausted him, and it was too difficult for him to even stand. On the other hand, Naruto looked very calm, as if nothing had happened. But such a powerful guy actually hid for a year and only began to emerge when he had the strength to apply for graduation. He was indeed an opponent worthy of attention. Whether it was his character or his ability, it seems that there is no need to stay in school any longer. Thinking silently in his heart, Sasuke dragged his heavy steps towards the village. When he passed by Ryosuke and the others, he unconsciously looked up at the two people standing on the treetops. Coincidentally, he met Ryosuke's smiling eyes. "Are you laughing at me?" Ryosuke's eyes reminded Sasuke of his arrogant performance before the battle. His face, which was already red due to the high-intensity battle, was even hotter. But soon, he suddenly thought of a question. Since even Naruto is hiding, then this Ryosuke looks good, not as impulsive as I imagined. Looking at Uchiha Sasuke's eyes when he left, Ryosuke chuckled and jumped down from the treetops. It seems that as long as it doesn't involve that man, he can still control his emotions. After Sarutobi Hiruzen left, the feeling of being spied on had disappeared. The Uchiha clan has a pupil technique called the Eye of Soul Reflection, and their abilities evolve and change with the changes in their emotions and souls, so this clan is often more extreme in expressing and releasing emotions. Their emotions are more complex and more difficult to control than those of ordinary people, and the process of emotional changes will be infinitely magnified. This is also the reason why the second-generation Hokage Senju Tobirama has always believed that the Uchiha clan is uncontrollable and may have a great impact on the village. Although they are powerful, they are unstable, so this strength is actually their flaw. Uchiha Sasuke has always been cold in school. I thought he was paralyzed. Hinata also jumped down from the tree and landed lightly on the ground. Sakura and Ino like him so much, but he has no reaction at all, just like a wooden man. And there are so many inner dramas and rich emotional changes. After all, she is going to be the head of the family. Under the influence of her father and Ryosuke, she has slowly learned to observe everyone around her. To be honest, the Uchiha Sasuke I usually see in school is very different from the Uchiha Sasuke in the ward, during the battle, and after the battle. The two are like two different people. How dare you say that about others? Hearing her mumbling, Ryosuke couldn't help laughing. You are also cold-faced outside, pretending to be difficult to mess with, but when you get home, you are as well behaved as a little rabbit. Hush. Hinata pouted angrily and put her finger on her lips, indicating that Ryosuke should stop talking if he couldn't. Her appearance made Ryosuke stunned for a moment. Then, he laughed helplessly. This was the first time Hinata showed such a little emotion since they met. Although she can now maintain a very cool attitude outside, and even make an appointment with a male classmate to fight, but the inner self under the disguise has not changed much. In the past, whether in the process of training or in life, she was silently bullied. Whether it was her father or Ryosuke himself, if they said something a little bit harsh, making her feel wronged, tired and suffering, she would never easily express her inner thoughts, but kept them in her heart silently. So every time she had to wait for Ryosuke to notice that her mood was not right, and then comfort her. But now, as her grades are getting better and better, she has also begun to become more and more confident, as if she has slowly changed and learned to express some dissatisfaction in her heart. Looking at Ryosuke's eyes, Hinata seemed to have noticed that her performance was different from before. She put down her hands with a red face, and put her hands behind her back, a little at a loss. It's turned into a little rabbit again. Looking at her with a chuckle, Ryosuke gently stretched out his palm. Let's go and tell Naruto that he can graduate tomorrow. Yeah, Hinata, who was a little emotional just now, held Ryosuke's hand very obediently. The two walked towards Naruto, who was resting in the distance. Ryosuke could clearly feel that Hinata's steps beside him were bouncing, and she looked like she had changed from a quiet little rabbit to a lively little rabbit. Ryosuke, it seems that I underestimated Uchiha Sasuke. As soon as he approached, Naruto stood up from the ground as soon as he saw the two of them, and said to Ryosuke, in fact, I thought I would win easily. After all, my ninjutsu was taught by my third-generation grandfather. And Sasuke has not awakened the Uchiha bloodline, and does not have the ability to master the Sharingan, so his strength is greatly reduced. But even so, it's not easy for me to win. He didn't rely on the Sharingan to stand up in the first place in the grade. Whether it's theoretical knowledge or ninjutsu, the art and physical skills are all achieved by his own efforts. Ryosuke smiled and threw the scroll left by Sarutobi Hiruzen over. Don't use the 3 words Uchiha to cover up his sweat and talent. This is the assessment application left by the third generation. He just came to watch the game, but left early at the end, but he asked me to give you this application that has been passed. If everything goes well, you should be able to become a real ninja tomorrow. You don't want to graduate early, do you? Hinata seemed a little silent all the way home. Ryosuke could see what she was thinking at a glance. Hey. Hinata looked up and was about to hide something, but faced with Ryosuke's eyes, she smiled awkwardly. Don't think about it, it's impossible. She was about to scold her harshly, but under this smile, Ryosuke changed his words to, the graduation assessment that you applied for on your own initiative is different from the group assessment arranged by the school. Besides, your father won't agree to it. Give up. Oh, Hinata puffed up her face and muttered, feeling a little unwilling. But soon, she regained her good mood and jumped up. It was just a momentary impulse. She knew that she was still a long way from Sasuke and Naruto. Ryosuke shook his head helplessly, but after her reminder, he seemed to understand why Naruto in the original book failed to graduate twice. There are 2 ways to graduate from the ninja school. One is that the school teacher confirms that most of the students of the same level have the ability to graduate and then starts the group assessment. This assessment does not distinguish between elite classes and ordinary classes, so it usually takes a long time. Generally, the group graduation assessment is held between the ages of 10 and 12. The content of the assessment is just some very basic theoretical knowledge, or the 3-body technique. But as the first village to propose ninja education, Konoha certainly cannot have only the time-consuming way of outputting talents such as group graduation. This is only for ordinary ninjas. The other is the graduation assessment of self-application, which is for geniuses with ninja talent, so this kind of difficulty will be greater. In general, this kind of difficult self-application for graduation will let the village's genin act as test questions and fight with the applicants. Regardless of whether they are defeated or not, the examiners will score according to the actual performance in the battle, and those who pass the score will graduate successfully. Therefore, the ninjas who can successfully complete graduation through the second path are all extremely talented ninjas without exception. Like Hitaki Kakashi, who entered school at the age of 5, graduated in the same year, and became a chunin at the age of 6, and Uchiha Itachi, who entered school at the age of 6 and graduated at the age of 7, each of them is a gifted child with all kinds of talents. In the original work, Naruto was very likely to apply for early graduation in order to gain attention, but failed twice, which led to him graduating in the same class and year with Uchiha Sasuke and others after failing to graduate twice. However, Naruto in this timeline is very strong, and he should be able to become a genin smoothly tomorrow, as long as the third Hokage does not embarrass him and secretly arranges an opponent with the strength of a jonin but wearing a genin forehead protector for him. Click. Hinata suddenly stopped and pulled Ryosuke out of his thoughts. He turned his head in confusion and looked at the girl beside him who was restraining her smile and pretending to be cool. Master Ryosuke, Miss Hinata. At this time, a voice sounded in the distance. Turning his gaze towards the direction of the Hyuga clan, Ryosuke discovered that there was a figure standing at the entrance of the clan, waiting for them. Promotion successful. Approaching this person, looking at her forehead protector and ninja protective gear that were different from before, Ryosuke chuckled and said, "Congratulations." In front of him was Hyuga Shinkai, who had accepted the task of the Jonin assessment some time ago and ventured out of the village. Whether it was Shinkai or Soji, they themselves had strength and character that were not inferior to Jonin. They had been on the battlefield and stayed at the level of Chunin for a long time, so it was natural for them to pass this assessment. "Thank you for the compliment, Master Ryosuke," Hinata Hoshikai said politely, and handed over another list. "This is what you asked me to do before. I recorded it in this scroll while I was on the mission. Thank you for your hard work." Ryosuke took the scroll silently, but did not start to check it immediately. "What are your plans for the near future? Do you want to continue to be the bodyguard for Hinata and me?" He looked at Hinata Hoshikai and asked. "Of course." Hinata Hoshikai nodded happily. Ryosuke chuckled at her. "That's it, I may occasionally give you something troublesome to do. Just tell me." Hinata Shinkai replied without hesitation. "But, what about that boy Soji? He won't fail, right? He has completed his mission some time ago and returned, but now he has left Konoha and gone to Kyoto to take up the post of guardian ninja." Ryosuke explained. "Let's go back first." "Yes, father, I need you to help me find a few people." After dinner, Ryosuke hesitated and came to the study. Sitting at the desk, under the dim light, Hinata Hiyashi raised his head, waiting for his next words in confusion. These are the people I circled on this list. Ryosuke handed over a scroll with both hands. These clansmen are all proficient in medical ninjutsu, and they don't have much ill will towards our clan. Medical ninja. Is there something wrong with your body? Is it because of the Byakugan? When it comes to medical treatment, Hyuga Hiyashi frowned, revealing a lot of worry in his expression. No, it's not my body, it's actually like this. Unable to bear this kind of warm family affection, Ryosuke smiled awkwardly and talked about what happened on the way back from Kyoto with some entanglement. To be honest, in addition to being afraid of being confined, part of the reason for hiding this matter from Hyuga Hiyashi was that he was a little unwilling to face Hyuga Hiyashi after hearing about this matter. Bang! As expected, after listening to him talk about the matter of killing Uchiha with a gloomy face, Hyuga Hiyashi directly slapped the desk in half. The scrolls, pens, and papers on the desk were scattered all over the floor. The desk lamp fell directly to the ground, losing its already weak light. The unlit study suddenly lost all light. However, even in the dark, Ryosuke and the others could clearly see each other with their Byakugan. Nonsense. Hinata Hiyashi gritted his teeth and said, I asked you to go out for training to see the world, not to arrange some tests for yourself and put yourself in trouble. I was wondering why there was such a long gap between the time you left Kyoto City and the time you returned to the village. Well, it turns out that you are making fun of yourself. Or are you kidding yourself with your life? But I have arranged everything. Ryosuke replied weakly. Just you. Can you guarantee that you have made every possible effort? What if the attackers were not 1 Jonin and 2 Chunins, but 3 Jonin? Then we retreated while we were observing on the cliff. I will not fight a battle without any chance of winning. What if they found out before you did? You won't even have a chance to resist. We have Byakugan and we guessed in advance that the other party might attack us, so we slowed down all the way and took turns to use Byakugan to observe the surrounding situation, just to be able to see their traces in advance. You. Hinata Hiyashi was so angry that his fists were shaking. Do you know the danger of doing this? I have already estimated the possible dangers and ways to deal with them, and I have planned the evacuation route. If we really can't win, we are sure to leave. Boom. There was another roar, and every word was rejected by Ryosuke. Hinata Hiyashi was so angry that he kicked the lamp. The lamp, which had already lost its light, was directly kicked to pieces by this kick. Calm down. If Hinata and Hanabi hear the noise and come over and see this, they might think that we are fighting in the study. The dark room was in a mess, with papers and scrolls scattered all over the floor, and countless tiny glass tube fragments. This was the remnant of the desk lamp that was originally used for lighting, which was kicked away. It was rare to see Hyuga Hiyashi panting heavily and showing such an angry expression, but Ryosuke did not think of appreciating it for a few more minutes at this time. He shook his arms and tried to comfort her. Through his white eyes, he could clearly see that Hinata, who was playing with Hanabi on the other side of the main house, had already noticed the movement here. Fortunately, she did not come over, but her expression was a little confused. You dare to put yourself in such a dangerous situation the first time you leave the village. How can I calm down and dare to let you leave the village again? Hyuga Hiyashi panted heavily, and his mental state cultivation over the years was like feeding a dog. However, he also noticed that his daughter seemed to be affected by the noise here, so he didn't smash things to vent his anger. To be honest, he hasn't been this angry for many years. But he couldn't bear to hit Ryosuke. After hesitating for a while, Ryosuke couldn't help but continue to refute, Father, with my current strength, there is no ninja who can stop me. Still so arrogant, Hinata Hiyashi glared at him and was about to continue to worry about something. But thinking carefully about Ryosuke's strength after the last transformation, he was silent again. Don't worry, Father, I have my own considerations for every matter. Seeing him open his mouth but unable to speak, Ryosuke gave him a way out at the right time. If it's not a particularly urgent matter, I can handle it myself and won't bother you with everything. I need to learn to grow up and be independent. In fact, it's the same for me, Hinata, and Hanabi in the future. Okay, do you mean I don't care about you? Are you tired of me as a father? In the darkness, Hyuga Hiyashi took a few deep breaths to calm down. So, if you didn't need me to help you find these tribesmen, you plan to keep this matter secret from me and pretend that nothing happened, right? Ryosuke was speechless for a moment, and replied with a wry smile, this. I'm thinking, there's no need to bother you. When he said this, his mood was inexplicably subtle. In fact, not only Hinata changed because of his arrival, but even he himself was changing unconsciously because of coming to this family. As usual, it was absolutely impossible to speak in this tone, but now. HMPH. Hinata Hiyashi snorted coldly, looking down at Ryosuke who was only half a head shorter than him. Tell me clearly, what are you going to do with the bodies of these 3 Uchiha? The word Uchiha is very sensitive in the village now. Once it is discovered, the consequences will be disastrous. Ryosuke scratched his head. I understand, so I specially selected these trustworthy clansmen, but it is not appropriate for me to call them over. After saying this, he closed his mouth and did not speak again. The atmosphere was a little silent. Neither of them spoke again. Still waiting for a reply, Hinata Hiyashi looked at Ryosuke deeply. As for the question of what he planned to do with the Uchiha clan members, he did not continue to ask, and said in a cold voice, I will call you tomorrow, but you have to stay in the village for the time being until you 2 graduate. Ryosuke panicked and explained quickly, no, you know, my current strength is not weaker than that of an ordinary jonin, you don't have to worry about me so much. What he feared most was that Hinata Hiyashi would directly put him under house arrest after knowing this. To be honest, if he had just come to this world, he might not care what Hinata Hiyashi thought, and he would leave the village when he should leave. But now, he had to consider his father's thoughts. No room for negotiation. But Hyuga Hiyashi interrupted him directly, I can't control you when you go out, but in the village, you must listen to me. Even if you are very strong now, not weaker than ordinary jonin, what if you meet an extraordinary jonin, or even a ninja who is stronger than jonin? Unless you have the strength to defeat me and I can't control you, I will not agree to let you go out of the village and do anything dangerous. His tone was very stern, with the tone of no room for negotiation. But it was this request that made Ryosuke dumbfounded. Okay. He hesitated for a moment and replied. But thinking about such a plain tone, whether it seemed too contemptuous of his father, he quickly added, is it really no room for negotiation? No room for negotiation. Clenching his fist, Hyuga Hiyashi repeated again, if you come to me just for this matter, then you can go. By the way, help me find Alyong and ask her to find a few people to help me clean up the house. Okay then. Ryosuke nodded helplessly and quietly left the study. He kept his face frozen until he reached the courtyard, and then he couldn't help laughing. You are obviously confident in my ability, why are you so stubborn and unwilling to let me leave? Hyuga Hiyashi's attitude to him was too obvious. While laughing, he walked to the other side of the house. Butler Alyong is now playing with Hanabi with Hinata, and Ryosuke needs to find them now. And the dark study, with Ryosuke's departure, fell into silence. After a long time, a helpless sigh sounded from the darkness. It's not that I don't want to stop him, I will give him freedom when he grows up completely, it's that I don't have the ability to stop him. The next day, when Ryosuke and the others came to school, almost the entire grade was discussing Naruto's early graduation. On the elite class side, those who have seen Naruto's actual combat assessment performance are convinced, and they are not surprised that he will apply for graduation. But the people in the ordinary class have never seen Naruto take action, and they even have a lot of malice towards Naruto, so there are mostly laughs about his application for graduation. Naruto, who has been unknown for a year and rose overnight, is a complete script of the counterattack of the useless male protagonist. At present, it seems that the plot has developed to the stage where the male protagonist is about to explode and a group of spectators are brainlessly mocking. In other words, now all that is left is for Naruto to pass the graduation exam and slap the faces of these mockers with the truth, and the script will be over. But at this time, before this face-slapping link appeared, another piece of news came out. Uchiha Sasuke returned to school, acknowledged Uzumaki Naruto's strength, and also admitted that he lost the top spot in the grade to him, and he also applied for early graduation, and after officially becoming a ninja, he will compete with Uzumaki Naruto. Sasuke is also going to apply for graduation. Ryosuke really didn't expect that because of his existence as an anomaly, the entire timeline would collapse all of a sudden. The two male protagonists graduated 6 years earlier. He could no longer predict what kind of changes this would cause to the subsequent plot. You know, the main plot timeline of the original work is only 4 or 5 years. From the time Naruto graduated at the age of 12 until the fourth Ninja World outbreak stabilized, they were only 15 or 16 years old. Now that the entire timeline has been disrupted, Ryosuke may not be able to predict the future, unless his Byakugan can develop new abilities. But for the fact that the unpredictable future has become even more unpredictable, Ryosuke's mood has not been affected at all, but even more, happy. During lunch break, Ryosuke and Hinata were enjoying the cool breeze on the rooftop together. The gentle and warm smile on his face has never changed from beginning to end. Ryosuke's disguise of smile is like Hinata's pretended indifference in front of others, but it is more skilled and natural. You seem to be in a good mood. Little Hinata can always catch some subtle changes in Ryosuke. Even if the smile on his face remains unchanged, she can occasionally detect when he is really smiling and when he is fake. Part of the reason for this is that she has seen Ryosuke's real smile. Because of some interesting things. Ryosuke chuckled and turned his head. Based on what I saw when I watched the game, Uchiha Sasuke's strength should also graduate smoothly. But just like what I said to you at the beginning, every time someone breaks away from his own destiny and moves in a temporarily unpredictable direction, it makes me feel that my existence is real. Blinking, Hinata looked like she didn't understand. Forget it, you will understand later. Ryosuke shook his head helplessly and was about to continue saying something. But the chakra in his body suddenly flowed violently and gathered uncontrollably towards the edge of his eye sockets. The changes in his body made him stop talking suddenly, his eyes became confused and at a loss, and under the stimulation of this chakra, he turned on the state of white eyes. Help, 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 water escape, water dragon bullet technique. Why can't it be extinguished? What's going on with this black flame? Noise and crying sounded in my ears. It was like the beginning of a dream, trance and confusion. Without an introduction or background, the scene in front of Ryosuke had become different. The last second, he and Hinata were taking a nap on the rooftop where they were studying ninja. And the next second, he was already in a disaster like a hell of fire. The black flames were like flowers, blooming in all directions with Ryosuke as the center. Wreckage and ruins were everywhere, and the ninjas who were rushing back and forth seemed to be unable to see his existence, rushing towards the ruins and rescuing the villagers buried in the collapsed houses. Although the scene in front of me was different from my memory, there was no doubt that Ryosuke could still see that he was in Konoha village from the fact that only half of the Ichiraku ramen sign was left next to him. Is it an illusion? He had an idea at the first moment, but soon shook his head. The smell of blood, the choking dust of the ruins, everything so real, it didn't look like an illusion at all, it was more like a lucid dream. Sasuke! An angry roar sounded from behind. Ryosuke turned his head and found that in the distance, a huge purple giant was holding a long sword condensed by chakra, intending to chop it towards the Hokage building. Through the white eyes, he could also see that Uchiha Sasuke had a very cold expression on his face in the purple giant, and his eyes were full of hatred, which was a deep hatred for the village. Blood and tears flowed from his eyes. This Uchiha Sasuke was different from the one Ryosuke knew. Not only was he more mature in appearance, but he also had a deep scar on his cheek. And that roar, when Ryosuke was about to look in the direction of the sound, everything was interrupted. There were only scenes flashing quickly, like a slideshow. What's wrong, Ryosuke? The sudden change on Ryosuke's face made Hinata stand up from the chair vigilantly. She also opened her Byakugan and was alert to the situation around her. But for a long time, Hinata did not find any abnormal situation. In the classroom below, some students were still taking a lunch break, and in the training ground downstairs, there were also people arguing for actual combat. Everything was the same as before, without any changes. There were only the two of them near the rooftop. Retracting her Byakugan, Hinata turned around in confusion and looked at Ryosuke, who was sitting on the chair and still maintained his previous posture. At this time, Ryosuke seemed to be awakened suddenly, shivering all over and recovering from the state just now, his whole body was already wet with cold sweat. 58 seconds. A number quickly emerged in his mind, which was the time he was immersed in that state just now. Since that time, he has been waiting for such a state to come, and he is always preparing. Ryosuke. A worried voice sounded in his ears. Raising his head, Ryosuke looked at Hinata's face, suppressing his inner doubts and shock, and he showed an ugly smile. It's okay, I just saw something strange. Pursing her lips, Hinata didn't ask any more questions, and sat aside again very obediently. It seemed that she noticed something happened to Ryosuke, so she didn't disturb him, but just stayed quietly. Ryosuke felt warm in his heart for Hinata's understanding, but his attention was quickly attracted by the picture flashing in his eyes just now. The state just now was a bit like the feeling that he used all living beings as chess pieces and looked down on the world. But compared to that time, when he couldn't remember anything after it was over, this time Ryosuke clearly remembered everything he saw in his eyes when he was in that state just now. The ability to see through the future. The Byakugan has the possibility of seeing through the future, and this ability has appeared in people of the Uchiha Clan. But compared to the substantial ways such as illusion and coercion, this unfathomable and very empty ability makes Ryosuke unable to start. It is also for this reason that he has never started to develop this ability, which can be said to be the most powerful ability of the Byakugan. But now, he seems to have passively triggered this ability, because the Long River of Fate has experienced a huge shock not long ago. However, the triggering of this ability did not bring any good news to Ryosuke, but rather very bad news. Although I can't tell his age, it should have happened in the past few years. That roar was not Naruto's. Naruto's voice is not like that, but it is possible that his voice has changed due to his age. He will attack the village. He should know the truth about the genocide, but the Sharingan in his eyes seems to have not grown into the eternal Mangekyo. If that is Konoha a few years later, where am I? Although he has the ability to see through and perceive with his Byakugan, Ryosuke was unable to see all the situations in Konoha with the ability to see through the future. This also includes himself. This time, he only learned that Uchiha Sasuke would grow up quickly, and he might learn the truth about the extermination of the Uchiha clan in a few years. And relying on a pair of incompletely evolved Mangekyo, he turned the entire Konoha village upside down. But Ryosuke did not see the specific process and more content. He is not familiar with the ability to see through the future, and he has not even caught a little clue of how to use it. However, he is very clear about the consumption of this ability. The chakra in his body is still full, without any signs of consumption, but Ryosuke can clearly feel the weakness of his body. It seems that the ability to see through the future is based on the consumption of vitality and the power of the soul. However, Ryosuke is not worried about this. If it's consumed, it's consumed. The world today is not the world without magic in the previous life. The means of immortality and life extension exist in this world. As long as he doesn't overuse this ability, it won't have much impact in the future. The premise is that he can master the method of use. Ryosuke, lunch break is over. Immersed in the thoughts of seeing through the future this time, time passed quickly, and Ryosuke didn't get out of his thoughts until Hinata's whispered reminder sounded next to him. When he came back to his senses, he realized that a long time had passed. Turning his head, he met Hinata's worried eyes. Ryosuke smiled and stood up. Don't worry, I'm really fine. But, this is the first time I see your smile so bitter. She was referring to the smile that Ryosuke gave her after he just came out of that stiff state. Suddenly saw something, and I was a little worried for a while, but then I thought about it carefully, it's not that important. Ryosuke smiled and stretched out his fingers to gently pinch her cheek. But you seem to have gained some weight recently. Although you have a big appetite, it would be better to limit yourself. No, Hinata, who was originally worried, was immediately taken by the rhythm. She stood up angrily and slapped Ryosuke's hand away. Although I eat a lot, I also consume a lot. Ryosuke smiled and took his hand back. He took a step back first, and then spoke again. The main reason is that you eat so much that our family can hardly afford to support you. Hinata was furious and leaned forward to grab Ryosuke. But unfortunately, he dodged it flexibly. Class is about to start. We have to go back to the classroom. Ryosuke teased her while leaving the rooftop and running down the stairs. Although Hinata was chasing behind, She soon had to restrain her movements because she was back indoors and there were outsiders. She stared at Ryosuke fiercely and ran away. I'm not fat. Hinata waited until Ryosuke disappeared before mumbling softly, stretching out her palm to pinch her cheek. Then, her movements froze. It seems a little fat. When Ryosuke returned to the classroom, Naruto, who had not been seen all morning, had returned to his seat. And on his forehead, there was a ninja forehead protector, which seemed to have successfully passed the graduation assessment and became a ninja. Walking into the classroom from the front door, Ryosuke could hear many people in the class whispering about Naruto. From time to time, someone would turn around and look at him, which was rare in the past. In the past, Naruto was more like a small transparent person, and even if he later won the first place in the grade, he did not get much attention. But now, he can be said to have really become a celebrity. Because in recent years, no one has successfully passed their personal graduation application. How does it feel? As soon as he sat down, Ryosuke asked casually. He scanned the classroom, but couldn't find Uchiha Sasuke. Not bad, admiration and envy, these are two emotions I've never felt before. Naruto smiled brightly and seemed to be in a good mood. But he thought about it and asked curiously, but Ryosuke doesn't plan to graduate early. When I left the assessment site just now, I saw Uchiha Sasuke also applied. If the genin who will be sparring with him for the graduation assessment is the same person as me, he should be able to graduate successfully. At this point, he got a little excited again. Our Konoha genin classes are usually divided into groups of 3. If you also apply for graduation now, we are likely to be in the same group. At that time, Sasuke and I will be the main force of the team, and Ryosuke will assist us. It doesn't matter if there is no Jonin to lead the team. I won't graduate early. Ryosuke shook his head helplessly. I have to wait for Hinata to come together. The Nine Tails Jinchuriki, the Uchiha Orphans, and the Hyuga clan, these 3 forces together, Ryosuke thinks it is unlikely. Unless he becomes a Hyuga orphan, in which case it is possible to be assigned to the same class. Ryosuke, although you have always given me a very powerful feeling, I still have something to remind you. Looking at the door of the classroom, and Hinata slowly walked into the classroom with a cold face, Naruto said to Ryosuke seriously, women will only affect the speed of your becoming stronger. We are still young now, and there is no need to be bound by those complicated emotions. Becoming strong is the path we should take now. Like those people in the class who focus on love, you should know whether their strength has improved or regressed since they entered school. His tone was very serious, but it didn't taste good to Ryosuke. If I hadn't appeared, you would have become the fool you said, bound by all kinds of love and complex emotions. We Hyuga are different from other families, and Hinata is the future head of the family. As her future husband, I should assist her. Resisting his inner speechlessness, Ryosuke once again called Hinata out as an excuse. He had discussed this matter with Hinata a long time ago, and she didn't mind standing in the open to help him shelter from the wind and rain. Is that so? That's a pity, you are obviously very powerful. Naruto looked at Ryosuke with some pity. He felt that Ryosuke was dragged down. But in fact, in Ryosuke's view, Naruto is like a single dog who has been solo since birth. Although he doesn't understand the beauty of love, he has been persuading others that love is a prison and marriage is a grave. At this time, a scream came from the students in the front row. Sasuke is back. The noisy classroom suddenly became quiet. With a sour face, Uchiha Sasuke entered the classroom with a cold attitude as usual, but every bit of his expression told Ryosuke. His graduation application failed. What's the matter? The third-generation grandfather should have seen Sasuke's strength. There is no reason to reject his graduation application. Naruto also saw Sasuke's subtle expression and was full of doubts. Maybe it's because of that thing. Looking at Uchiha Sasuke thoughtfully, Ryosuke's heart was a little complicated. The reason was that a few hours ago, he had just seen this guy's future and saw his appearance and strength when he grew up. Before those curious people asked Uchiha Sasuke whether his application was successful, Yumino Iruka came in from outside the classroom with a scroll in his hand. Be quiet, everyone, it's time for class. Although he is a good old man, Iruka is also a strict teacher. After he spoke, Those who had stood up with curiosity in their eyes could only hold back their thoughts and return to their seats. Before class, there are two things I want to explain to you. I did not start class immediately. Uruka stood on the podium and looked at the students below with a smile. Finally, he stopped his gaze on Naruto. I believe that everyone knows what happened today. Uzumaki Naruto in our class applied for his personal graduation assessment in advance yesterday, and successfully passed it today, and was officially awarded the qualification of genin. Although we have only been together for a short year, I hope everyone can congratulate him on taking the first step on the road to becoming a ninja. After saying that, he was the first to applaud and congratulate Naruto. Congratulations. As a deskmate, Ryosuke certainly had no reason to refuse, and he also applauded. But the attitudes of others were relatively cold. Except for Hinata and Shikamaru, who knew Naruto's life experience like him, no one else paid attention to Iruka's leadership. It is worth mentioning that Sasuke, who had been sitting alone by the window, also congratulated Naruto on his graduation. Although only a few people in the whole class congratulated him, Naruto was quite happy about this scene. It seems that many people have recognized me because of my ability. His tone was full of joy, not fake, which surprised Ryosuke. But thinking about it carefully, it seems natural. This is Naruto, although his personality has changed due to various factors. But in essence, he is still a person who yearns for sunshine, but perhaps there is also a part of the influence of Ashura chakra. However, Naruto was not discouraged, but Iruka, who was standing on the podium, was a little embarrassed. He felt that he seemed to have done something wrong. So he quickly stopped applauding and started talking about the second topic. As for the second thing, it is also about the graduation assessment. Because we are now in a relatively peaceful period, unlike the previous war-torn period, the village has decided to reform some of the school's systems. One of the more important contents is to implement the graduation assessment. The school has decided to raise the application standards for individual graduation assessments. Only students who get the first place in the grade are eligible to apply for graduation. Moreover, the school plans to increase the difficulty of the assessment from the original Genin Sparring assessment to the Chunin Sparring assessment, but it is still the same as before. Regardless of victory or defeat, it is judged by the actual score obtained in the battle. The new practical assessment and theoretical examination have not yet begun, and the old assessment has not been taken because of family affairs. Uchiha Sasuke seemed to have not met the application standards, so his request was rejected by Sarutobi Hiruzen. However, Ryosuke was still quite skeptical about this. He even thought that this system might be adjusted because of Uchiha Sasuke, in order to prevent him from graduating early and suppress his growth. You have to know that the growth of the Uchiha clan can only be stimulated by a real life and death battle in most cases. So Ryosuke guessed that perhaps Sarutobi Hiruzen and other Konoha high-level officials arranged such a wall for him by virtue of their promise to Uchiha Itachi, that is, to protect Sasuke. That is, to keep him safely inside the wall, and to limit his growth, so that he would not become the out-of-control Uchiha before. I thought I could be assigned to the same class with Uchiha Sasuke, but now it seems I can only be with two teammates I don't know. Naruto looked a little disappointed, and he didn't know if the two of them had developed feelings for each other because of the battle that day. Anyway, before that, they didn't have much intersection, and they might not even have spoken to each other. It doesn't necessarily mean there is no chance. Ryosuke thought for a while and replied with an ambiguous word. Quote, You don't think he can graduate successfully under the hands of a Chunin, do you? Naruto was a little surprised. To be honest, if I hadn't graduated, I might not even be able to graduate when facing the Chunin. After all, most Chunin have been on the battlefield. Who knows? Ryosuke didn't explain this question in detail. Take this last class seriously. I believe that after becoming a ninja, you will miss this time in school. Looking up, Iruka, who had already started teaching, did not talk to Naruto anymore and took out the ninja manual from under the desk. Although Naruto was puzzled, he saw that Ryosuke didn't want to continue the conversation, so he didn't ask any more questions. Flipping through the ninja manual casually, Ryosuke glanced at Uchiha Sasuke by the window, but quickly retracted his gaze and stopped paying attention. According to the future he saw, Uchiha Sasuke would definitely not be bound by this reformed system and would definitely graduate smoothly in advance. Otherwise, he would not be able to awaken the Mangekyo at that age. After all, in school, with the protection promised by Sarutobi Hiruzen, he would not be in any danger. But how he graduated and how he had such a strong grudge against the village, these things Ryosuke didn't know. But just like what he had always said to his father, when he saw the future, it also meant that the timeline would change. The future he saw was not necessarily what would actually happen. When there was such a picture and fragment in his mind, even if Ryosuke deliberately maintained the same life and rhythm as before, there was no way to guarantee that everything would be the same as the future seen by the white eye. Unless, in the timeline when Uchiha Sasuke had a grudge against the village, the people he came into contact with during his growth had nothing to do with Ryosuke. Otherwise, everything would definitely change. But this is impossible. Ryosuke couldn't avoid all the people Uchiha Sasuke came into contact with during his growth. And because he knew this, he didn't have a strong change because of what he saw. Although at the beginning, after seeing those pictures, he was quite emotional. But after calming down, Ryosuke found that what he saw actually didn't make any sense, because the time span was too long, and there were too many changes in the process. Unless the future he sees is something that will happen within a few seconds, or even an inevitable event within a few minutes, this uncontrollable ability will not be of any help to him for the time being. The scorching sun shines through the forest. The noisy cicadas are extremely harsh in the summer. Spring passed unnoticed, and more than a month has passed since Naruto graduated. Boom! A huge roar sounded in the forest. In the training ground, Ryosuke hit the void with one palm after another, just like before he practiced the soft fist. However, although the movements are similar, in fact, whether it is the internal force generating skills or the force transmitted by the body itself, it is much stronger than before. So even though there is no target in front of him, the sound transmitted by the whirring palm wind is extremely huge. The force that seems to tear the air is strong and penetrating. Without using chakra, Ryosuke is trying to use the physical skills he has learned with pure physical strength. Naruto's graduation made Ryosuke a little disappointed. After all, he is the only person in the class who makes him feel good. Even Uchiha Sasuke, who might turn evil in the future and grow up very fast, is not in his eyes now. When Hinata took over the social power and was able to communicate with the future heirs of other clans in the village alone, the purpose of Ryosuke staying in school had changed. So after Naruto graduated, he simply stopped going to school. Anyway, it was easy for him to ask for leave with his identity. But although he said he was asking for leave, he actually stayed at home to practice alone. The goal that Hyuga Hiyashi gave Ryosuke was that as long as he defeated him, he would no longer restrict Ryosuke's freedom. But because there was nothing worth going out, he did not challenge Hyuga Hiyashi, but practiced silently alone. Master Ryosuke. Ryosuke, who was still silently mastering the secret techniques of the Hyuga clan in order to master them more quickly, stopped because of a shout. The dark blue lion head gathered in his hand slowly dissipated, and he turned around and looked at the entrance of the training ground. As expected, Hyuga Shinkai was holding a scroll and waving at him. After taking a few deep breaths to calm the blood and chakra that surged during the training, Ryosuke slowly walked towards the door. "What's wrong?" he asked in confusion. "There's news from Soji, saying that the daimyo is going to give us a share of the benefits according to the original agreement." Shinkai did not step into the training ground, but quietly stopped at the door, waiting for Ryosuke to come over, and then handed him the scroll in his hand, the benefit they gave up as a small vassal state of the Fire Country. They are willing to hand over all the material output and population of this small country to us for jurisdiction. The clan leader said that this benefit was fought for by you, so you make the decision, whether to accept or not. Small country. Ryosuke took the scroll casually and spread it out directly. His eyes, which were already extremely perceptive, only took a few glances, and he understood all the contents of the scroll. They are generous this time. It seems that because of the decline of Uchiha, they can get back a lot of things they gave up. When he spoke, his eyes were full of interest. Since coming to this ninja world, there haven't been many things that can interest Ryosuke. But this time is different, because the name of this vassal country is called Wave Country. Rather than a small country, it's better to say it's a fishing village. Hinata Shinkai introduced the information she had collected to Ryosuke. The population of Wave Country is only 1,000 people, and it is on an island with a very small area. This is a country without the protection of a ninja village. Because of its geographical location connected to the Fire Country, it often establishes diplomatic relations with us and pays tribute to us with many treasures. In exchange, as long as we encounter difficulties, we will occasionally provide assistance. Speaking of this, she paused, but I heard that recently, the king of Wave Country died of a serious illness, and even many ministers died with him. Although there is no relevant information about the specific cause of the disease, if it is an infectious disease, then this country with less than 1,000 people is basically ruined. We accept this compensation from the daimyo, which is a bit too bad. Hinata Shinkai expressed some of her views on this matter. Maybe it's not because of the disease. Ryosuke pondered, let's send some tribesmen to investigate the situation first. Since the daimyo has not given a time limit, we are not in a hurry to make a decision. According to the original timeline, the country of waves will be safe for the next 10 years. It should not be destroyed by infectious diseases. But Ryosuke is not a person who relies heavily on the plot. Besides, the original timeline has basically collapsed under his changes. Whether the country of waves will change for unknown reasons is hard to say. But, anyway, I may have to go to the village. Ryosuke felt helpless when he thought of this. Only 1 month had passed, and he was going to break the goal set by his father. To be honest, he had not challenged it. In addition to not having anything important to do outside the village, he also did not want to embarrass his father. After so many years together, Ryosuke still understood Hyuga Hiyashi's character quite well. He was a person who wanted to save face. But think about it carefully, am I a little too confident? Leaving the training ground, he walked towards the main house. Ryosuke followed Shinkai behind him, but he did not take the initiative to talk to him and ask for more details about the Land of Waves. Instead, he suddenly realized a problem. It seemed that, since he knew this goal, he had never felt any pressure and felt that he would not be able to beat his father. Instead, he felt that his father was giving him a break and deliberately giving him freedom. Realizing this problem, Ryosuke quickly analyzed the strength between the two. But as he analyzed more, he felt more and more relaxed. Although because of the second transformation, his various ability indexes have grown by leaps and bounds, and his strength is getting stronger day by day. But, he actually has no pride, but is constantly and tenaciously immersed in boring practice. As for the reason why he did not feel pressured by the goal given by his father, it is because he no longer regards him as a goal in his subconscious mind. It may be a bit arrogant to say this, after all, Hyuga Hiyashi is the head of the clan, and he is also a senior ninja. But it is precisely because he is the head of the clan that Ryosuke keeps reducing the pressure on him in his heart. The reason is nothing else, because among ninjas and politicians, Hyuga Hiyashi's focus is constantly moving towards the profession of politicians. This is an image that he has slowly formed in Ryosuke's heart after such a long contact. The Hyuga clan was well protected because of the system. Although they would go to the battlefield, it was only under extremely special circumstances. As a ninja, Hyuga Hiyashi had of course also gone to the battlefield when he was young. And his overall contribution to the war made him qualified as a Jonin. But, from the middle of the Third Ninja World War to now, he has not really been to the battlefield for a long time, and he has not even left the village a few times, being dragged down by various government affairs. Guns that are not often sharpened will rust, and the same is true for ninjas. Gradually focusing on the family, he abandoned personal improvement and focused on coordinating the family's rights and interests and his status in the village. These things consumed his energy and strength. Although Ryosuke was young, he had become strong and healthy after 2 transformations, and he was constantly improving. Although Hyuga Hiyashi was older and more experienced, he was constantly reducing his strength. In comparison, the gap brought by age was constantly narrowing. Ryosuke and Hyuga Hiyashi knew this. Have you made up your mind to challenge me? Sitting on the porch in the courtyard, Hyuga Hiyashi was drinking tea while watching the red glow brought by the sunset. Because of the matter of Wave Country, Ryosuke told Hyuga Hiyashi about challenging him as soon as he returned home. Without hesitation, Ryosuke replied seriously, because I am likely to go to Wave Country, so I need to have the qualifications to leave the village. I guessed that you would not settle down, but I didn't expect it to be so soon. Hyuga Hiyashi seemed to have expected it, and put the teacup in his hand on the plate next to him. Okay, but you need to wait for me for a while. He shifted his gaze from the sunset to Ryosuke. To be honest, being challenged so soon made him feel despised. After a pause, Ryosuke didn't understand what he meant. You mean, we still need to make an appointment? Of course, I need to spend some time preparing. Hinata Hiyashi nodded, a stiff smile on his serious face. I haven't really taken action for a long time, my body is almost rusty. Since I told you, I will only allow you to leave the village if you defeat me. Then you must defeat me as a Jonin, not as the head of the Hyuga clan. Although the titles of the positions are different, Ryosuke now understands what he means. How long do you need? He asked after a moment of hesitation. Because he was not sure when the clan members sent to the Land of Waves would be able to get the news back, he hoped to let his father be completely assured of him as soon as possible. 1 week. Hinata Hiyashi stretched out a finger. Since I told you about this, I have been adjusting my body, and now it is almost ready. Although I can't perform to the peak state when I was fighting on the battlefield, from the perspective of the ninja position, I can already perform at the level of a Jonin. I am looking forward to fighting with you. Facing the serious Hinata Hiyashi, Ryosuke also smiled. About our battle, let's not tell Hinata and the others, so as not to worry them. For this father who was so stubborn, he could only try his best to cooperate. Okay, Hinata Hiyashi nodded pretentiously. The father and son smiled at each other and saw the excitement in each other's eyes. Although the Wave Country is a vassal state of the Fire Country, it is on the border of the Fire Country after all. If you want to reach the border from Konoha village and start at full speed, it will take a long time. Ryosuke can still wait for just 1 week. But, it's not really waiting. Under the serious attitude of Hinata Hiyashi, he couldn't help but feel pressure in his heart. He had already come into contact with the strength of the Jonin in the previous battle. In Konoha village, there are 3 levels of ninjas: Genin, Chunin, and Jonin. The rules for distinguishing these 3 levels are not based on simple strength, but on overall comprehensive qualities. Most of the Genin are ninjas who have just graduated, similar to the so-called interns. They have neither strength nor rich combat experience, nor a relatively perfect state of mind, and are easily affected by many unexpected events. So at this stage, ninjas are mostly in groups of 3, led by an old Jonin to perform tasks. And Chunin is a formal ninja who has left the internship stage. At this stage, every ninja has a certain strength and combat experience, and the most important thing is to have a certain ability to make independent judgments when performing tasks. As for the village, in addition to the position of Kage, the highest ninja level Jonin needs to have the ability to complete tasks independently. Most of the time, Jonins accept and complete tasks independently. They can face most emergencies without companions. Rich combat experience and perfect combat awareness make the Jonin have extremely sharp thinking in battle. They can have combat intuition similar to the sixth sense and avoid many troubles and injuries. Just like when Ryosuke faced the Jonin of Uchiha. Whether it was a surprise attack or a subsequent attack with Shinkai and others, this Jonin always responded to the enemy very quickly. If it weren't for the 2 companions dragging him down and affecting his state of mind again and again, it would be difficult for Ryosuke and others to catch him if he was alone, and he might escape. That time, Ryosuke had 2 ninja helpers, Shinkai and Soji, who were close to the level of Jonin, but their levels were temporarily at the Chunin stage due to the assessment. But this time, he will face a Jonin alone. Although this Jonin is a rusty spear that has not seen blood for a long time, from the words of his father, he has begun to polish it to let the rust fall off. But, he certainly still has a chance. After all, the current Ryosuke is completely different from the Ryosuke back then in terms of overall strength. The inner chakra began to surge, and the blue-white eyes on his face became brighter and brighter. When he thought about having a direct confrontation with a Jonin, Ryosuke couldn't help but feel a little excited and couldn't suppress his excitement. Boom! With the surging mood, the pressure that had been practiced was compressed to the extreme. The ground within a meter around Ryosuke formed a circle of circular gullies in the huge roar. Standing on a tiny rock pillar, Ryosuke glanced at the deep gullies under his feet. It can be used at the first time. If the chakra is sufficient, this can almost replace the Kaiden and become a new absolute defense. The gully is about a few meters deep. The pressure has compressed the range to the extreme. It is the maximum power he can exert at present. Ryosuke, Naruto is here. Ryosuke was still practicing hard to prepare for the upcoming battle. But suddenly, Hinata's shout interrupted his movements. But when he turned around, he didn't see Naruto beside her. He walked up quickly and asked in confusion, "Naruto is here." He remembered that he hadn't seen this guy for more than a month. He didn't know what happened to Naruto after he became a genin, and what kind of teammates and guiding jonin he was assigned to. Yes, he was waiting at the gate of the clan. Hinata explained, "After school, Naruto came to the school to find you, but you asked for leave. Thinking that you seemed to care about him, I invited him home as a guest. But at the gate, because I remembered that you and father were very cautious when treating him before, I didn't dare to let him enter the clan directly. I found an excuse, saying that outsiders cannot enter the clan at will, and asked him to wait at the gate. I came back to ask about the situation. I didn't think it was wrong." Ryosuke nodded. Naruto hadn't become a formal ninja before, so the village's top leaders had been considering him. And now that the village has let him graduate early and granted him the status of a ninja, it means that the top leaders have gradually let down their vigilance against him. In the future, there is actually no need to treat him as strictly as in school, as long as, don't casually reveal things he shouldn't know to him. He explained while leading Hinata to the gate of the clan. I didn't hide it from Hinata because she was young. In this ninja world, age doesn't mean anything. Besides, she will become the clan leader in the future, and she will definitely face these things in the future. Hinata listened quietly and carefully remembered every word of Ryosuke. The gap between people is very large. Since she was 4 years old, when she saw that Ryosuke could beat her most afraid father with one palm, she knew that Ryosuke was a very powerful person. So from that time on, she has been learning from Ryosuke silently, trying to make a change in her cowardly self. It's the same in terms of personality and how to deal with things. Under the red clouds, the gate of the clan was not quiet, and many clan members who went out returned home. And most people would glance at the lonely figure when passing by the gate. Although they were very confused about why this person would appear here, no one talked to him, or drove him away and didn't let him stand at the gate of the clan. It took a while to get to the gate of the clan from the main house. However, from a distance, Ryosuke could still see Naruto standing there with his back straight, not relaxing at all because of waiting too long. "It's been a long time since we last met, Naruto." Under the strange gazes of many Hyuga clan members, Ryosuke chuckled and took a few steps forward. Sorry, I kept you waiting for a long time, please come in." "Long time no see, Ryosuke." With Ryosuke's invitation, Naruto, who had been standing at the door, smiled and stepped through the door. "It's my problem. I came to visit without an appointment in advance. It's mainly because too many things have happened in the past month, and I can't help but want to share with you. After all, you are one of my few friends." Although the Hyuga around were strange, they did not stop him because of Ryosuke and Hinata's status as royal family members. Clearly feeling the smile on Naruto's face, it was different from the previous blind imitation of himself, but a kind of happiness from the heart. Ryosuke tentatively said, "It seems that the life of a genin is very good." Naruto has been imitating himself, he knows it very well. Whether it is behavior or some opinions, he is imitating. It's not learning, but imitating, wanting to be the same as myself, but that was when I was in school. Yeah, not bad. Naruto stood on the left of Ryosuke, and Hinata on the other. The three of them walked side by side towards the main house. Although it's boring, it feels good to be self-sufficient. As Naruto walked, he talked about his life as a genin for the past month, and I found, there are actually quite a few people in the village who were friendly to me, during the execution of the mission. You may not know that becoming a ninja does not mean that you will be assigned to a very dangerous mission at the first time. The level of the commissioned mission is divided into S, A, B, C, and D, and a rookie like me who has just become a genin can only perform D-level missions. These tasks are very simple, mostly commissioned by ordinary people, such as weeding, cleaning up garbage, and even helping to build a house. After Naruto graduated, he was assigned to Kakashi by the third Hokage just like in the original work. After all, in the original timeline, Kakashi withdrew from the Anbu around this time, and with the help of Might Guy and others, he became a Jonin in the village who was responsible for leading and guiding the genin. However, because Haruno Sakura and Uchiha Sasuke have not graduated, his two teammates are of course different from the original timeline. So big. Awesome. Standing in front of the Hyuga main house, Naruto widened his eyes and exclaimed. Don't be restrained. Although our family has many rules, if it is at home, it is not so strict. Ryosuke and Hinata stood at the door, welcoming Naruto to visit their home. Leading people to the living room, Hinata left to play with Hanabi, leaving the place for the two of them. Please. The two sat opposite each other on both sides of the wooden table. The housekeeper Alyong brought afternoon tea and snacks, and Ryosuke signaled Naruto to be at his leisure. Is this a big family? Although I know it is very powerful, this is my first time to see it. Since Naruto saw the Hyuga main house, the curiosity in his eyes has never stopped. But, is my uncle at home? Will he be embarrassed if I visit so suddenly? He asked about the situation of Hyuga Hiyashi. Father has been busy with training recently and is rarely at home. Even if he is at home, he will welcome your arrival. Ryosuke chuckled and replied, let's continue talking about you. How are your two teammates? They are all very good to me, especially Rin. Speaking of the two teammates, Naruto's smile rose unconsciously again. Rin is a member of the clan of the third-generation grandfather. He is very powerful, but he takes good care of us and has a good personality. The test arranged by teacher Kakashi was coordinated by him. We were able to successfully get the bell. And Shangshin, although he is a ninja who graduated from the ordinary class through the collective assessment, he has a unique insight into medical ninjutsu. Although my recovery ability is good, my injuries can heal faster with him. It seems that seeing Ryosuke after a long time makes him very happy. All the way home, he basically never stopped talking. Judging from the words, he gets along well with his companions. Since he is a teammate arranged by Sarutobi Hiruzen for Naruto, he will naturally not have any malice towards him like other people in the village. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.